sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Ukrainian president agrees to peace talks with Russia at the border with Belarus, but says he holds little hope of any meaningful solution.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Monday, the 28th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Coming up this morning.
Ukraine will hold peace talks with Russia after President Putin put his nuclear forces on high alert.
The UN General Assembly will hold an emergency special session today for the first time since 1982.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has told a Ukrainian church in London that immediate family members fleeing Ukraine will be able to join their relatives here in the United Kingdom.
And we're on your doorstep this morning at the Beacon Tree Estate in Dagenham, which is the largest council estate in the UK with more than 27,000 homes.
Alice Porter will be there finding out what matters to you, including that situation in Ukraine.
And as always, you can join in any of our discussions by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Morning to you, wherever you're watching from this morning. The next 24 hours will be crucial, according to Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky. His warning came during a phone call with Boris Johnson, who promised Britain would do all it could to get more arms to Ukrainian forces.
Well, it comes as more explosions were heard overnight in Kiev amid reports of large convoys of Russian troops and tanks moving towards the capital. The UN is holding an emergency session later today for its members, for all 193 of them.
We're going to have major analysis on what is going on very, very shortly. Major General Jonathan Shaw is former Director of Special Forces and Commander of UK forces in southern Iraq, and he joins us now. Major, good morning to you. Very nice to have you there. This whole Kiev situation and Russian convoys moving on it, what's your analysis of that? How concerned should we be about that?
Well, it's obvious that Putin wants to take over the whole of Ukraine at the moment, and this is just the next move. But as we discovered in 2003, invading Iraq, actually taking a country down when you've got overwhelming military force is actually the easy bit. The hard bit is creating any kind of stability afterwards. So I think this is going to go on for some time.
Very alarming development yesterday when, clearly in a display of frustration from President Putin, he raised the spectre of nuclear weapons, even using that kind of language, hugely escalating things. How real is that threat, and how prepared are we for that?
Well, I think, as you said right at the start there, a gesture of frustration. The trouble with President Putin is that he only has one tool, and that's the military. Every other tool he's got is pretty weak. I mean, he has got he knows that his weapons of producing corn and producing energy should, in his view, have prevented the European Union and the West giving a strong response. But the EU and the West has totally sort of ignored that and has just slapped sanctions on Russia and in defiance of those tools. So the only tool that Putin has left is his weapons, and threatening nuclear weapons is just to show that nothing's off the table. Everything is on the table as far as he's concerned. Ask yourself what possible use, what possible relevance nuclear weapons has in this conflict, and you're really struggling to find a rational reason. But I think that plays to the hint that President Putin is perhaps not as rational as we might like to think at the moment.
But he's also struggling, Major General, with conventional forces. The consensus seems to be that by day 5 of his offensive, things should have been, a bit more progressive than they are.
That is the nature of most operations from D-Day onwards. You make these plans and then things don't work out as you'd hoped. And the question in any military operation is not how good your plan is at the start, it's how you react when your plan doesn't quite work. And I think what you're seeing is a traditional problem with the Russian military, is that they're not very good at delegating command and people making decisions. It's a very top-down system. And so structurally, psychologically, I think they're not really well attuned to adapting on the hoof. I think you've also got the problem that the soldiers have been sent in there having been told that they were liberators, and they suddenly find that they're in for a fight they really psychologically hadn't expected.
You made a very good point there. You say whatever they take, they've got to hold them. They've got to police that. And they will be entering into a urban guerrilla warfare situation with any advances they make, won't they?
Well, absolutely. I mean, that must be the absolute terror for Putin. I mean, all the reports coming out, how reliable they are, I don't know, suggest that Putin was told by his acolytes that this would only take 4 days and it'd be a quick, sharp insertion. And indeed, if you look at the way the Russians invaded, they abandoned their normal tactics and went for a relatively softly approach to try and, like standing on a hill and beating their chest and roaring and hoping that Ukraine would just fall down. They haven't. They've fought, and I think that's quite surprised them. And pity the poor general who's got to tell Putin that his plan's not working, because I think that's one of the troubles with senior command. If you become a victim of your source of intelligence, and every indication one gets is that Putin has surrounded himself with yes men, and no one will actually tell him the truth. So I think he's in for a bit of a long struggle here.
That being said, Kiev is being circled at the moment, isn't it? And it does look as though the Ukrainians, at least, will need increasing support from the West. We've been hearing lots about it in terms of sending weapons and hardware. Is it getting through? I mean, how hard is it to do that in a situation like this, to get, ammunition? As we heard Zelensky saying over the weekend, that's what he needs, not a ride out of there. How hard is it for the West to support Ukraine as it's under threat without actually putting boots on the ground?
Yeah, well, we're in transition, aren't we? I mean, my view before the invasion was that actually, looking at it from a straight military point of view, there's no point Ukraine forces trying to hold ground. You're much better off just letting the Russians come in, and then you attack their soft underbelly. You hit their logistics. You hit them when they're static. You hit them with civil protests, which play out badly on social media. And so you attack them in that way. The fact that they've achieved the success they have has been quite a surprise to me, to not just the Russians. While we're in this transition mode, increasingly it's going to be difficult to get people in there. It's going to be tricky to get supplies in there. When the Russians have taken over the country, then it will resemble more the case in Afghanistan, where we created rat runs into the Mujahideen, and you create these covert routes that take a while to get in there. As long as there are airports that are controlled by the Ukrainians, as long as there are roadheads that they can get to, then we'll be able to send them. But yes, make no mistake, the longer, the further the Russian invasion goes, the harder it will get to get weapons and stuff in there.
Oh, thanks for your company. Oh, no, you've gone. Thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate your analysis. Thank you very much indeed. What we're going to do throughout this whole conflict is that we're going to have daily updates from our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who joined us right across this. And Mark, the Major General, he was talking about the convoys that are heading towards Kiev, or Kyiv as they're now calling it. You've got aerial reconnaissance on this.
Yes, satellite imagery that has been released. It shows a very significant large convoy. It's about 40 miles, we're told, north of Kiev, or at least it was during the day yesterday. We don't know exactly where that convoy is at the moment, but that satellite image showed that the convoy was about 3 miles long. It contained tanks, missile launchers, armoured personnel carriers, lots of other sort of troop-carrying vehicles that were in the convoy, and crucially as well, it's apparently also contained fuel, logistics supplies, because according to the British Ministry of Defence, and they have been releasing regular updates in terms of what they see as the situation on the ground. And this has proved fairly useful for us because there is, in this kind of war, a lot of disinformation that is out there, and at least the British Ministry of Defence, with their intelligence assets on the ground, with their satellite imagery, and of course their constant contact with the Ukrainian military, they were saying that the advances of the Russian forces were not as significant as first thought. It's also aerial footage that has been released by the Ukrainian Ministry of Defence, by their chief minister, showing, although unverified, that explosion of a Buk carrier, a missile launch system, a mobile missile launch system belonging to the Russians, part of a convoy that, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defence and their armed forces chief, had been blown up with the use of a Turkish-supplied drone. So it seems to some extent that there is some kind of capacity for the Ukrainians to mount some kind of aerial operations, although I think most of the activity that's coming from the Ukrainians does appear to be on the ground, firing at tanks and other military vehicles, with the likes of these shoulder-launched missiles supplied by the British and supplied by the US in recent months.
Mark, appreciate that. Keep us posted throughout the morning. We'll be crossing back and forward to Mark throughout the programme. But for the moment, thank you very much indeed.
Now, yesterday, Boris Johnson said Ukrainians fleeing the country will be allowed to join immediate family members living here in the UK.
The government also confirmed a further £40 million in humanitarian aid. Political commentator Albi Amankona joins us now with his take on this. Albi, what have you got to say?
Good morning. I mean, the situation in Ukraine is absolutely shocking as we wake up this Monday morning to the prospect of war in Europe continuing beyond this week and into the months and weeks to come. The British government has been providing support to Ukraine first in the material of army material and weapons, and now it's just announced that this package of humanitarian aid and also access to the United Kingdom for immediate family members of Ukrainians living in the UK.
And Albi, I'm interested to know, if you can see any silver linings in this. Is that, the response, I suppose, of the West has been incredibly united, hasn't it? And really interesting developments yesterday from Germany, for the first time in my living memory anyway, increasing their defence spend. They're now the biggest spenders on defence in the EU, 2% of GDP. A huge change in foreign policy there for Europe. And as I say, a positive to bring us all together in unison.
I think it's difficult to be talking about silver linings at the moment, to be honest, Isabel, but I think increases in defence spending, particularly from European NATO members like Germany, who do not meet the 2% NATO commitments, are definitely to be welcomed. It's actually something which President Trump was a huge advocate of during his time as president, so that's definitely a good thing, that we're finally seeing the biggest economy in Europe taking their military seriously. Because I do think it's definitely the truth that Europe has become quite complacent with our way of life, and many European nations have not been spending enough on defence.
What will the reaction all be from Europe collectively? Can't have been a surprise to Putin.
No, I don't think it can have been a surprise. But what we have seen happen in the last week, I think, is a lot more unity than we thought was initially possible. Europe's been a very divided place over COVID, over Brexit, over many things. And actually what we've seen over the last week is Europe really come together in the face of this joint threat that we all see from Putin. You know, we've seen selected Russian banks blocked out of the SWIFT international payment system, and that has caused this morning the ruble to actually plunge by nearly a third. The Moscow Stock Exchange delayed its opening this morning, and on Asian markets, indeed, the ruble was trading down nearly a third. We're hearing reports of queues outside ATMs across Russia. So we're seeing these economic sanctions, both put in place by Europe and the US, having an impact on the Russian economy. And the question will be whether or not these economic sanctions will impact Putin's decision making.
Or the general public. I mean, what we're not really hearing is how this war, how this incursion is going down with ordinary Russians.
No, you're absolutely right. We're not hearing about what the opinions of ordinary Russians are. But one thing that does give us an indication that maybe this isn't that popular with the Russian public is that over 3,000 Russians have been arrested for protesting against this Russian invasion of Ukraine. Now, that's not something which happens very often. People do not normally protest in Russia because they might get beaten up by the police, they might get thrown in prison. But over 3,000 Russians have been arrested for protesting against this war. So that indicates to me that perhaps this war isn't as popular with the Russian public as Putin would like.
Of course, it's very difficult for Russians to know the true situation. It's only being described as a special operation in the Donbass region. The word war is being banned from use. It's being censored out of Russian broadcasting. But I'm interested to know whether or not you think this could be the end for Putin, what this could mean for his presidency. I mean, we saw, didn't we, yesterday, the extent of his frustration by even the fact he was talking about a nuclear response in all of this.
Yes, there are certainly some commentators talking about this being the end for Putin. I personally think that could be perhaps a little over-optimistic. We're not even a week into this war yet. Russia's army is one of the most powerful military forces in the world. I definitely understand the argument where people are saying perhaps this is a step too far for Putin. They talk about the fact that the Russian army actually doesn't have the resources to take a country the size of Ukraine for that long, which is why it's thought that these talks have been arranged between President Zelensky and the Russian government, I think near the Pripyat River, near the Belarusian border. So there are some commentators who are saying the war isn't going to plan. But I would just caution them by saying we're not even a week into it yet. So there's still a lot more tragedy which could come from this. But obviously, we're all hoping for the best.
But Albie, we have got this situation where there will be talks on the Belarus border today. What can we hope to achieve there? What way do you see those squaring up? I mean, you can't really see the Russians saying, oh, really, very sorry about this. We shouldn't have done it. Let's shake hands and we'll go home.
It is difficult initially at the outset to see what these talks will achieve. First of all, because these talks are happening at the Belarusian border, and Belarus is not a neutral country when it comes to this conflict between Ukraine and Russia, because, of course, many argue that Belarus is really just a satellite state of Russia itself. I think we can certainly hope that perhaps because the war hasn't been going to plan for Russia, that Russia might want to stop their military invasion a little bit and maybe try to come to some kind of diplomatic solution. But I think we'll just have to wait and see what the results of those talks will be. I don't think we can predict what will come from those yet, because if there's anything that we have seen over the past week is that President Putin and the Russians are totally unpredictable.
Okay.
Albie Amonkona, thank you very much indeed. Albie's a political commentator there with his views on the latest situation from Ukraine.
OK, with the time at 6:17, let's bring you up to date with the rest of the morning's news. And the government is fast-tracking plans to tackle Russian so-called dirty money. Ministers will table the economic crime bill in Parliament tomorrow, which aims to expose oligarchs who launder their wealth through the UK's property market.
The ruble is at an all-time low against the dollar after Western nations imposed harsh sanctions against Moscow, including blocking Russian banks from the monetary exchange program SWIFT. Russian planes have also been banned from Canadian and European Union airspace, forcing Aeroflot to cancel all European flights.
The Prime Minister has confirmed that any Ukrainians currently settled here will be able to bring immediate family members to join them in the UK. Downing Street says the measure will benefit many thousands of people making desperate choices about their future.
And Russia's international football team has been ordered to play its matches under the name Football Union of Russia in neutral countries. with no fans, flags or the national anthem.
That's as nations including England, Wales and Poland are refusing to play against them.
A new report has revealed that 4 in 10 primary school teachers have to buy books to stock their classrooms because of limited access to budgets.
The Centre for Literacy in Primary Education also found 6 in 10 teachers say they have no access to new books.
Most workers say they've experienced surveillance in the past year as they transferred to more remote forms of work due to the pandemic. Research by the TUC suggests some employers started using webcams to monitor their staff and tracked when and how much they were actually typing. So we're being spied upon at home, or if you're working from home today, they're looking, they know what you're doing and what you're not doing, which sort of doesn't surprise me. It's not right, but it doesn't surprise me. I tell you what I found absolutely shocking. I mean, obviously I was off last week and I was having conversations, I was away with friends and I was having conversations with them, and I swear to you, every night there was an advert on Instagram or Google related
to what
to
you're
that
talking
conversation.
about. It's terrifying.
Frightening.
Yeah.
Absolutely scary. The most banal things that you were talking about. Suddenly you were being offered and given all sorts of deals on these things and whatever. And that is really, really scary. And you just wonder what we can ever do about that and what anybody is ever going to do about it.
If anything, this situation in Ukraine makes you think twice about all of these things. I mean, you used to just think, it was quite amusing that you would see it on your Instagram feed if it was linked to something you'd said in front of an Alexa, for example. But now you worry that there could be sinister undertones, and we're talking about the cyber warfare as part of this attack from Russia as well. It's a real thing and, something that we all need to be mindful of.
Yes, be careful what you say. And if it's happened to you, what is the most ridiculous thing that you've then been reminded of? I mean, you'll talk about going to a concert and then you'll see offers for those tickets to that particular concert come up on your phone and whatever. But honestly, some of the things, I can't even tell you some of the things I was talking about. No, they were so silly, so stupid. And there they were. There was the ad saying, Eamonn, you must do this, you must get that. We could offer this to you or that to you. But has it happened to you? And what was the most ridiculous thing? At GBNews is the Twitter address, so you can email at gbviews@gbnews.uk.
OK, it's 6:21. We're going to take a quick break. After that, we'll have more on the invasion of Ukraine. But first of all, here is your Monday morning forecast. We're looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking rather cloudy with outbreaks of heavy rain slowly moving north and east. Let's take a look at the details.
The rain will become persistent and often heavy right across the southwest of England. As we head towards lunchtime, temperatures will reach around 10 to 11 Celsius, turning breezy around the coasts, dry and bright across southeast England and London, with sunshine in the morning, but cloud increasing from the west. Temperatures widely in double figures.
Back over to Wales, and here it will be a cloudy morning with rain spreading across the country, that rain turning heavy over the higher ground.
After a fairly bright start, the Midlands will see increasing amounts of cloud, with the risk of some patchy rain moving in by the time we get to midday. The temperatures there hovering around 9 degrees Celsius, and similar weather conditions across northern England.
Yeah, cloud increasing quickly with outbreaks of rain moving in from the southwest. Some drier interludes holding towards Newcastle. Temperatures there around average for the end of February.
Sunshine and scattered showers will continue across northern parts of Scotland. Cloudy further south with increasing amounts of rain moving in. The temperatures around 9 Celsius for Edinburgh and Northern Ireland should also escape most of the rain today, with some brighter sunny spells, but also a scattering of showers.
Temperatures there will be around 9 degrees Celsius. So the band of rain will continue to move east as we head through the rest of the day, drier in the west later, and that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, we're continuing our coverage of the situation in Ukraine. Last night, the Prime Minister, in an address in a Ukrainian church in London, said that refugees fleeing the country will be able to join immediate family members back here in the UK.
The United Nations says around 360,000 people have already fled Ukraine, with more than 4.5 million expected to leave if fighting spreads to further cities.
Well, for those people inside Ukraine seeking shelter, some have been forced underground where conditions are poor. Let's speak to the founder and CEO of Voices of Children. That's Lena Rozwadowska. Lena, good morning to you. Lena, so much on your mind, so much to do, and you are a voice for those children. What are you trying to say for them on their behalf?
The most important, what we are trying to say is that it's very unfair that children have to go through now in the 21st century, in the center of Europe, have to go through all this situation to stay in the bomb shelter. On this morning, 16 kids been already killed, died because of this Russian aggression. For this from Thursday, yeah, for this 5 already days. And a lot of kids will be injured, and it's very dangerous to stay for them in the big cities, in city center, in Kiev, in cities around, in eastern part, in the center, in the south of the country. So some of them with their families are staying in the road for 3 days, sleeping in the cars because the roads are blocked because of so many refugees go out from a big city, from city with a millions population. So this is so unfair, and we are trying now. I'm sorry. We are non-stop working for the last 5 days, like 24 hours around the clock, just to deliver. I don't know, as the minimum. Accommodation, to help with the transfer. A lot of our families and kids with whom we are working for the last 6 years in the eastern Ukraine, because the war started in 2014. You know, Russian aggression was a long time ago. So we've been working with the kids on the eastern Ukraine, where the front line for the last 7 years. most of these families and kids are now blocked there. They cannot go out because there is no trains, no any connection, and it's very even danger to move, because there was a situation when the family wants to leave on their own car and they've been killed. So I don't know what to say else. But it's really terrible.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know who isn't moved by hearing about the plight of children in this kind of situation. I mean, our papers here are full of stories, a baby being born in the subway in Kiev over the weekend, of children saying goodbye to their parents.
That we're seeing here.
Yeah.
These are scenes from World War II. You know, the parents and fathers who are not allowed to leave, they have to stay behind to fight. And this man saying, be brave for your mother.
Yeah. And now we receive a lot of requests for psychological helps. Yesterday, our psychologist was on the mobile phone with the children who are staying on the ground in the metro on bulk shelter, and because a lot of people with a panic attack, and the kids, and also those people who remember 2014-15, very aggressive hostage, and they've been moved to Kiev, and they thought that they are now in a peaceful. And anyway, it was peaceful. Now it's like the second trauma, you know. It's like the second re-traumatization, and thousands of people really don't know what to say to their children, and where to find a safety place, because here, even now, I'm on Western Ukraine. It's like 1,000 kilometers from Russian border, and it's near the Poland border. Even here, we had attack on the objects with soldiers. But anyway, people also hear this siren, and it's also nobody knows whether it even safety here near the Poland border. And a lot of refugees try to reach the country, try to reach the border to Poland, to Romania, to Hungary, and it's really hard to make it for 2-3 days doing this road.
Well, while we're speaking to Elaine, we're looking at live pictures coming to us from Ukraine. We can see how harsh the conditions are. Of course, it is the middle of winter. And you can see you're having problems with your camera there. But look, you know, this is traumatic for adults, let alone for children. And it will be trauma that troubles them for life, most likely, as you described, you know, seeing fathers forcibly taken away from them to be conscripted, being bundled in long queues, some people being in the crush on borders, all of these things, or being trapped, as you describe, in areas of conflict. How can people help if they're moved by what you're saying this morning?
A lot of people are really making donations to our foundation, and we will spend all these donations for buying food, supplies, and providing psychological support. The most important for us, even now, for example, we have a lot of requests in Kiev and Kharkiv, in the big cities where big hospitals, for any supplies for hospital, for any food for kids who are still staying in the kids' hospitals. And the biggest problem now is to deliver to there, because there is one way only from Kharkiv, but not in Kharkiv. Nobody wants to go. And we are really seeking among the country for these brave people who can really drive to in another way, not. So how can we help? I think it's a situation, not of one-day situation. It's a lot of people just lost their apartment, the places to live. So we will need this help for a long time. So I hope if people from abroad want to bring some stuff for refugees just near the border, it can be a help. And if they want to make a donation for Ukrainian foundations or I don't know families, it also can be a decision.
Fantastic. Listen, Lena Rozvakadovska from the Voices of Children, thank you so much for talking to us this morning.
Lena's charity there. I mean, can you imagine putting your two children, William and Poppy, on a train? And, well, you would probably be with them if you could, but being separated from your husband.
No, we've talked about it over the weekend. It's absolutely heartbreaking in Europe in 2022 that people are having to do this. The scenes, as you say, I mean, you just put that image of a father and son being separated. You put that in black and white and it could be straight out of a movie from 1940, wherever. Absolutely terrible. And that's not to mention all the things about their education. I mean, when no one's even thinking about when they're next going to be in a classroom. These children, not only have their lives been turned upside down, but their education's been put on pause. And that in itself is just so unfair on them.
I just wonder, you know, how Mr. Putin, or Mad Vlad, as he's called, front page of the Sun today, how he responds to pictures like that and all happening as a consequence of his actions. Your views, keep them coming in. With that, we're going to take a break. We've got the papers coming up next. Major General Chip Chapman and Chief Executive of Demos, Polly Mackenzie, with their take on what the papers are saying. Hope you can join us for that right after this break. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 6:36. We're going to take a look at our newspaper front pages.
Yeah, it was. I was just trying to stretch things out until it became 6:37.
Oh, were you? I had no idea.
Yeah, which
doing.
it is exactly now. So there we go. Here are your newspapers that start the week and that start this Monday. Times, first of all. It leads President Putin putting nuclear forces on alert. He claims it's as a response to NATO aggression.
Here's the Metro. It shows a Russian tank on fire after a missile attack on a road near the city of Sumy in northeast Ukraine yesterday.
I'd say it's quite hard to put a tank on fire, so that was some explosion. The Express says it's the free world versus Putin. European nations stood united in closing the skies to Russian planes and promising to deliver weapons to Ukraine.
The Eye is focusing on the dash to the borders as queues stretch for 25 miles at some border crossings as people try to flee. The paper says 368,000 people have fled to safety so far.
The Mail says it has already raised over £750,000 for a refugee appeal.
Mad Vlad goes nuclear. That's the Sun's headline with a picture there of said Vlad.
And it's time now to get the take of Major General Chip Chapman, former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, and Polly Mackenzie, Chief Executive of the think tank Demos. Very good to see both of you. Militarily, Chip, first of all, with you, this nuclear deterrent, nobody's going to win with that, are they?
No, and I think he's done this for two reasons. Firstly, it's a tool of coercive diplomacy against the NATO allies. And secondly, as the Ukrainian Foreign Minister said, Dmitry Kuleba, it's Putin's obsession. He went completely mad in his obsession to destroy Ukraine. And that is true, but it's obviously ridiculous in terms of nuclear strategy. You don't go to what we call MAD, mutually assured destruction, by irradiating Ukraine to save it in terms of Putin's mindset. That would be absolutely astonishing if he did that. Now, what would be interesting, of course, is the Americans haven't responded by going through the DEFCON system. The DEFCON system is Defence Readiness Control Measures. 5 is normal, 1 is Dr. Strangelove, and we're going to immediate nuclear war. We're not at that business. So I see this really as a tool of diplomacy as much as anything, and a warning to the West and to Ukraine to back off. But you can also put it in the context of Putin needing to escalate to try and improve his negotiating position today, and we'll come on to that probably a bit later. That's with using new weapons, new targets, new areas, because it's not just the nuclear forces that he's put on readiness. It's the strategic missile forces, and that also includes the hypersonic weapons.
But, Polly, it's the nuclear threat that has made the front pages of all the papers this morning.
And scares people.
And is what scares people. And people have been messaging me a lot in the last 24 hours asking, you know, what the true picture is, as if we know behind the scenes. No, but, you know, as journalists, people always assume we know perhaps more what's going on. And the reality is, in my lifetime anyway, I've never seen newspaper front pages that look like this. And we underestimate Mad Vlad at our peril, don't we?
I think we do need to be extremely cautious, because whilst some of this briefing about his isolation and madness is probably kind of psyops, trying to create a narrative to destabilise him among his cronies and supporters in Russia, he controls weapons which can murder millions and millions of people, and an exchange of nuclear weapons between Russia and the West would be devastating in terms of its impact, and is something that, you know, Chip was just talking about, mutually assured destruction. You know, it's the best argument for nuclear weapons is that it means that in the end nobody can fire them. But it doesn't prevent the outbreak of war, as we have seen in Ukraine. I think it's completely unacceptable for Putin to saber rattle in this way, and I think it is admirable that the West hasn't sought to then escalate, say, we've got nuclear weapons too, we'll arm ours. We have to try and de-escalate this. It is going to be a long, slow battle, actually, to push Putin back and to prevent him from securing his...
Was he expecting a long, slow battle?
I don't think he could achieve his strategic objectives in a few days, but I think we have to be cautious. So on day one, we were hearing from the Defence Secretary that he's behind his timeline. Irrelevant. Day two, we're hearing he's lost 100 tanks or whatever it may be. Irrelevant. They're all irrelevant, because what you do is you use tactical engagements, sequence those for operational objectives to achieve your strategic aims. It's only D+4, so we don't want to get carried away with what is the absolutely heroic resistance of the Ukrainians. So if they escalate today, because at the moment, on day two, they only used a third of their combat power, day three, 50% of their combat power. There's a lot left in reserve of the echelons of the Soviet army behind what's been committed so far.
Can I just ask you, though, from a military perspective, how important it is for the Russian soldiers to know what they're going into? Because we're hearing that they weren't informed by the authorities that they would be doing this full invasion. They were told they were going on this special mission in the Donbass. How much does that affect their ability to carry out what they're being asked to do now, do you think?
I think it'll erode their ability to fight. So the Donbass operation, of course, was posited initially as a peacekeeping operation, that they'd been invited in. We now know that that is obviously not true with a full-scale invasion. And I keep saying it's not armies or armed forces that fight wars, it's nations. And the Ukrainian nation has stood behind the Ukrainian army. And as long as you've got that will to resist with what looks like a very charismatic leader in Zelensky and the way he's doing business. He is a global icon today, so there is still a chance.
We were talking about him this morning. This man is unbelievable. He was a comedian. He won Ukraine's version of Strictly. He came first on it. He's standing there on the front line. He's ready to use a gun. He's not. He's saying to people, "Don't put pictures of me as some sort of hero up in your home. Put pictures of your family." He is something rather special, isn't he?
He is something rather special. I actually spent part of the weekend watching his TV series called Servant of the People, in which he plays a history teacher who basically accidentally becomes the president. It's rather good. It's charming. It's very sincere, but it's quite funny. And what's amazing is he then, on the back of a party called Servant of the People, has secured the presidency, and he has united the country around him. With amazing charisma. He was also the voice of Paddington.
Yes, I know, that just emerged. Yeah.
Every time you see a clip of him, you think, what an extraordinary man. And but that doesn't mean that the job he has now is easy. It is extraordinarily difficult.
But he seems to be up for it. He seems to, and the people seem to be behind him. It is an incredible. There'll be a movie made about him.
He could play himself.
He could play himself.
Well, that's if he survives. And the big question, he said over the weekend, or I think it was at the end of last week, he's #1 target for the Russians. That will be the case, of course, because once he's out, then the government will be destabilised. Is he going to survive this, do you think?
Well, there's no doubt that the Russians will try and go for a decapitation operation on him. Because a charismatic
Are we going for a decapitation operation on Putin?
We are not allowed to in the way that we posit international law. That will be done by different means. And
inside Russia?
Yes.
Should Putin be a worried man?
I think he should. And you'll see some of that coming out today, I think. If you can't get money out of the ATMs, if the ruble is going down, he might have psychologically got himself in a position where he knows that sanctions were coming, but he hasn't posited that for his population. Once you can't fly out of the country, once you can't go to any sporting engagements worldwide, you'll start questioning what on earth is it that we're doing.
Well, 20 million Russians live in abject poverty. And if they're suddenly being hit by all these sanctions, as you say, the ruble at an all-time low, ordinary Russians will quickly be extremely unhappy with him.
I just want to bring in a few other stories. There's a health story here, Polly, as well. That here in Britain, we have the worst death rate for lung conditions, things like asthma, in Western Europe.
So the Times is actually running a campaign for clean air, which I think is incredibly important. The way that pollution, both particulate pollution and chemical pollution, can affect our lungs. And so as part of that campaign, they're publicising this story. I think there's two things we need to do. First is think about that transition. We think about it in the context of Ukraine suddenly as well, how essential it is that we decarbonise so that we can have renewable, clean energy sources that are independent. And the other is for us to tackle smoking. We've really stalled on progress in reducing smoking and giving people nicotine alternatives.
It does creep back in, doesn't it? That, there was a time where it was total taboo. And now I think, particularly amongst young people, it's they're going to have a sneaky fag. I'm going to pop out and other things that they would smoke as well. So I agree with you that I think there is a sort of creep going on here towards it being socially acceptable again.
It really has, progress really has stalled. And it's interesting that actually vaping, which is substantially safer, though still not completely harmless, than smoking cigarettes, burnt tobacco, is also stalled. Except among kids, which seems like a real concern.
Chip, there's a story you have got here. Polly was talking about going green, and wind turbines were supposed to be seen as part of the answer to that. This story's in the Mail, page 25. A graveyard of green giants.
That's true. It's worth noting, of course, that by 2050, Europe itself is supposed to go to a green economy. And, of course, from a geostrategic and geopolitical perspective, I would always put this in terms of the strategic independence of Europe, the energy independence, which we see a problem with the Nord Stream 2 and the gas supply from Russia. Now, we know that Nord Stream 2 has been negated at the moment. The Germans seem to have turned it off. But the greatest strategic vulnerability in a thing called the Normandy Index by the European Parliament was the energy vulnerability in Europe. And we need to make sure that we close that gap. How we close that, but via renewables or nuclear energy or other means, is something that needs to be debated in Parliament and got to the forefront of us for the future. But the story is really about how you can't recycle the wind turbines. But I'm always in the view that technology improves, and in 20 years maybe we'll be able to do that.
Fingers crossed. Okay.
Nice.
Major General Chip Chapman, Pauline Mackenzie, thank you both. We'll see you again in around an hour's time.
Will do. Right now, we're going to talk about this big UN emergency session for every one of its 193 members because of this crisis.
Yeah, it's the first time they've held such a meeting since 1982. Let's get more on this and the international community's response from Professor of International Studies at Birmingham University, Scott Lucas. Very good morning to you, Professor. First of all, look, there's been lots of criticism, hasn't there, about the United Nations, whether actually it has any role or if it's just a talking shop. What do you think this emergency meeting could do?
Well, I think we need to be honest. It's a largely symbolic move because Russia over the weekend blocked any action in the Security Council to condemn its invasion. But it's a really important symbolic move. You have almost 200 members of the UN General Assembly. If the large majority, as I expect, come out and condemn the invasion, it further increases the isolation of Russia on the diplomatic stage. Certainly China will join Russia and say, no need to worry about this. But even China's being cautious about giving substantive support now to Vladimir Putin because he's lost the information battle. And the information battle was, Putin's a victim of the West, Putin's a victim of NATO. Once you attack another country the way that he's done, once you try to overthrow its government by force of arms, you give up that information advantage. And I think we're going to increasingly see a combination of important symbolic politics with the very real power of economic sanctions at the same time that Putin's military offensive has not gone as he had hoped.
Look, so much to talk about here, Scott, and opportunism being one of them. You mentioned China there. There's a lot of worry that while the world is looking at Ukraine, China's going to steer its eyes right on Taiwan.
Well, I think China will continue to sort of, say it's awful that Taiwan continues to not be part of one China, but I don't expect China to make a military move in Taiwan or the South China Seas. The United States, other countries retain a very significant military presence. They are committed to the defense of Taiwan. And it's not like that they're overextended by committing military forces to Ukraine because they can't. They can't directly engage the Russians there. No, I think the Chinese, who remember, are part and parcel of the global economy, even as they declare a separate system. I don't think they're going to risk their position right now by going after Taiwan or even giving big substantive support to Russia. In other words, caution rather than aggression is what's going to come out of Beijing.
Professor, I just want to ask you what you think is going to come of this peace talk that's taking place on the Belarusian border. We heard Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, saying yesterday Ukraine can't negotiate with a gun against its head. I mean, what can Ukraine really come out of this saying other than, we want your tanks out of here? They're certainly not going to say we're not going to defend our country. So are they futile, these talks?
No, because Ukraine shows that it stands. Specifically, the Ukraine government stands. The Ukraine people stand after Putin's initial plan last Thursday was to occupy the center of Kiev and to detain or assassinate President Zelensky. Here we are 5 days later. The Russians have only taken one Ukrainian city outside the area held by their proxies. Zelensky is still there, supported by more than 90% of Ukrainians, winning international praise. His ministers are still there. So the whole point of why Zelensky said yesterday, yes, I will go to the peace talk or a delegation will go to the peace talks on the Ukraine-Belarus border is they don't have a gun to their head in the sense that they haven't been conquered. I think as soon as the Russians try to say, you have to completely detach yourself from NATO, you have to completely detach yourself from the West, Zelensky will walk away from the talks and say, okay, have another go if you think you're hard enough.
Scott, always a pleasure talking to you. Professor Scott Lucas, a specialist in international conflict. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Well, it's time now for On Your Doorstep.
So what we're doing today is we're going to our reporter Alice Porter. She's in Dagenham and she's talking to people there about the issues concerning their community. And Alice, we just wonder how high up the agenda Ukraine is, because we were saying earlier, as soon as Putin made that threat about nuclear options, and it's over the front pages of the papers today, I think a lot of people felt that this war was coming or could come to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you were saying there, I'm in Dagenham, the east end of London, which is an incredibly multicultural area within London, and there's a lot of refugees and asylum seekers who live in the area. So, of course, to have this ongoing crisis with Ukraine and major questions about what is going to happen with the people there and who's going to be giving them anyone asylum and who's going to be taking in these refugees, it's a big question that many countries are asking, particularly people here in this area.
Lovely. Well, who have you got to talk to?
Well, I've come down to the Becontree estate, which is right in the centre of the area of Dagenham, and the estate is absolutely fascinating. It's the largest council estate in the UK, but not just the UK, it's the largest council estate in Europe, so I thought it would be a great idea to come down and meet some of the people here. Now, very much the heart of the estate is Kingsley Hall Community Centre. This has been here for almost 100 years, and it's doing some amazing charity work with so many of the local people here. So I thought it would be a great idea to come down and take a look at some of the amazing work that's being done here. So, good morning. Hello there. You're live with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster for GBNews. Good morning. Chris, do you want to sort of introduce yourself and tell us who you are and how long you've been working here for?
Yeah. Well, welcome to Kingsley Hall, which 93 years old on the Becontree estate. Amazing. Well, I'm not 93 years old. The charity's 93 years old. My name's Chris and I've been working here for 8 years now as director. Love living and working in the Becontree estate.
Well, brilliant. Well, thank you for letting us come along. Can we come in and just sort of have a look around us as to some of the work that you're doing? Because I know I've heard about this. This is the social supermarket. So just tell us, what is a social supermarket and what is it doing in the area?
Well, it's part of our COVID response work. So throughout the pandemic, we've been working with serving hundreds of local people, vulnerable people, with food drops, and really beyond that we've seen now the increased local food poverty, and so this is our response to that. Kingsley Hall provides a whole range of services to the local community, working from all ages, youth, vulnerable adults, young children, all the way through all ages, and our social supermarket is available for all the community to come and receive vital essential supplies.
Well, great. I'm going to grab a basket here. OK, so just talk me through. Hello there. Good morning. Hi. Good morning. Hi there. Thanks for letting us come in. All right, I've got my basket. How does this all work? I'm seeing there's a sort of points-based system. Is it effectively, this is, I assume, a bit like a food bank, but it's a slightly different way in which it's operating?
Yes, so everything is laid out enabling the dignity of choice, so anyone can come and use it. We do receive referrals and so do offer free food. We've been able to give away more than 50,000 items of free food in over recent months. And but it is on a points-based system, so 20 points equates to £20 worth of food, and for people that are able to afford it, they're able to pay £5 towards that. So effectively, it's subsidised by £5 instead of £20, and there's opportunity. It promotes generosity of spirit, so people can do kind of pay it forward and give a voucher for somebody that maybe can't afford it. But nobody goes away without food, whether they've got any money or not. That's absolutely fine. We're here to serve everybody.
Well, when you're talking about generosity of spirit, I mean, I feel like we sort of have to really sort of talk about that in relation to the terrible situation in Ukraine. A lot of discussion about what is going to happen with the people there. Particularly, there's been some criticism that the government here isn't doing enough in terms of supporting refugees. I mean, what's your sort of own policy on that in terms of the work that you're doing in the area?
Well, our founder in 1929, Muriel Lester, was actually one of the leaders of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and so peace has always been a key value for us, and our heart breaks along with everybody else with the tragic, catastrophic scenes at the moment. We work with people from a Ukrainian background, we work with people from Russian backgrounds, and we absolutely believe that we need to open our doors to refugees. We need, as tough as things have been over recent times, we need to lower our walls and widen our tables and just extend hospitality to those that need it. And Kingsley Hall would very much want to be a part of any initiatives to do that.
Well, look, thank you so much for letting me pop by today. I'm going to be going round the Becontree estate and meeting some more people on this really fascinating and historic estate that has been in the area here in Dagenham for over 100 years.
Yeah, and great to hear the work they're doing there at Kingsley Hall Community Centre there as well in Dagenham. So thanks, everybody. And Alice will be out and about, and she might be knocking on your door between now and 9:30.
Yeah, stay with us. Lots more coming your way this morning. All the latest updates from that conflict in Ukraine. See you in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukrainian President Zelensky agrees to peace talks with Russia at the border with Belarus, but says he holds little hope of any meaningful solution.
A very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock on this Monday, the 28th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Coming up this morning, Ukraine will hold peace talks with Russia after President Putin put his nuclear forces on high alert. The UN General Assembly will hold an emergency special session today for the first time since 1982.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has told a Ukrainian church in London that immediate family members fleeing Ukraine will be able to join their relatives in the UK.
And we're on your doorstep this morning at the Becontree estate in Dagenham. It's the largest council estate in the UK with more than 27,000 homes. And Alice Porter will be there finding out what matters to you, including the developing situation in the Ukraine.
It would be great to hear from you. You can join in any of our conversations. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet at gbnews. The government has reaffirmed its support for the Ukrainian people following the Russian invasion, vowing to extend visas for Ukrainian citizens currently living in Britain.
The Home Secretary's also promised to take an unspecified number of refugees fleeing the conflict, as border nations have taken hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian civilians fleeing the war zone in the past few days.
Let's go to Paul Hawkins. Paul is live outside the Ukrainian embassy in London. What have you got to update us with, Paul?
Just to give you some details about that scheme. Morning, Eamonn. Morning, Isabel, by the way. This scheme, then, basically it's free, this visa scheme that was announced by the Home Office late last night. It's only available to spouses, unmarried partners of at least 2 years, parents or their children if one is under 18, or adult relatives if they are carers. Now, it seems like a fairly comprehensive scheme. Before that, it was only open to those who were dependents of those already in the UK. Only dependents were guaranteed entry. So it is a significant widening of the visa scheme. However, it does not go so far as Number 10 was claiming before that policy announcement, that any person settled in the UK will be able to bring their Ukrainian immediate family members to join them here. So it doesn't include your brother or your sister if they are in Ukraine. Now, it doesn't go as far as the EU. They've effectively waived the having to apply through the asylum process for all 27 EU countries for the next 3 years. So any Ukrainian can settle in any EU country over the next 3-year period. Labour have called it shameful, and Refugee Council have said it is woefully inadequate.
Yeah.
OK, so will there be pressure then, do you think, on the UK government to fall in line with the European Union, who, as you say, have unanimously voted to allow Ukrainians to settle anywhere for the next 3 years?
Yeah, there will be a significant pressure. I mean, we had Boris Johnson at the, as you mentioned, at the Ukrainian Catholic Church in central London last night. He invoked the parable of the Good Samaritan. We in the UK cannot shut our eyes and pass by on the other side. And what is interesting is that statement from Number 10 late last night, that immediate family members will be able to join Ukrainian nationals here, but clearly that list does not include brothers or sisters. And it has to be said, if you are settled here, then probably your spouse, your partner or your dependents are here already. It does open the possibility, of course, to bring your elderly parents here from Ukraine. So the UK government is going further, but Boris Johnson claims that the UK is at the front of the queue, that it is the most willing country when it comes to helping people in Ukraine. But the EU has gone further than that. The question is, will the government concede to the pressure that will undoubtedly bear upon the government over the next sort of 24, 48 hours?
Paul, just a quick one on the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss. She thinks it's quite a good idea. She doesn't seem to have any objections to anybody, any British citizen, going out to Ukraine and fighting the Russians. How's that gone down?
Yeah, well, how's it gone down? I mean, when it comes to talking to other Ukrainians, they are grateful for any help that the UK, that British nationals or the UK government can give, really. I mean, there's £40 million worth in aid that's been announced by the UK government in addition to that widening of the visa scheme. But speaking to other Ukrainians, they say that, look, if British nationals want to come and take up arms and they want to help us, then the more the merrier, frankly.
Looks as if the embassy's open for business there, Paul. We'll love you and leave you. Thank you very much indeed for that. What we want to do throughout the course of this whole conflict is to bring you the very latest in terms of intelligence and video surveillance footage. So we go to our Home and Security editor, Mark White, who's been looking at that. Mark.
Yes, indeed. The people of Ukraine waking up this morning, and in the capital, Kiev, they have had to endure a 3-day-long curfew. Today, they're allowed to get back out onto the streets. Some of the shops will be open. Transport services will be running a limited service for people in the capital. It was relatively quiet in the capital overnight, but still some fierce fighting in other parts of the country, particularly around the town of Kharkiv, which is only about 20 miles or so from the Russian border in the east of the country. Now, there have been some satellite images that have been released by intelligence sources showing a very significant armoured convoy from a Russian armoured convoy, we're told, heading towards the capital, Kiev. Now, this was yesterday when these images were taken. It's about a 3-mile-long convoy that contains tanks, it contains armoured personnel carriers, other troop-carrying vehicles, and crucially, sort of logistics vehicles with fuel and the like as well. That was about 40 miles or so north of Kiev. We're not quite sure where that is today. There is also footage that has been released by the Ukrainian armed forces and by their defense chief, which they claim shows a Russian Buk missile system being targeted by a drone that was supplied to the Ukrainian military by Turkey. And in that footage, you can see a huge explosion as the Buk missile system on the ground is targeted. We have no way of independently verifying it, but it is coming from an official source in terms of the Ukrainian military and their armed forces chief who has put this out and claimed that. In addition to that, the British Cabinet Minister James Cleverly has been retweeting what he claims are shots of the Ukrainian soldiers on the ground wearing British fatigues and also carrying what he, James Cleverly, claims are shoulder-launched missile systems, anti-tank missile systems provided to the Ukrainians by the British in recent months. So it is going to provide more, Britain is, and the US and other key NATO allies, as well as, of course, the European Union has said that it will provide money directly now to provide arms to Ukraine to help in their fight against Russia.
Now, Mark, in terms of politicians, James Cleverly has been tweeting today, and you're across. We're just looking at what he's got to say on his feed.
Yes, so he put out imagery of what he said were Ukrainian soldiers with these anti-tank missile systems, which are being apparently used to good effect in Ukraine. There are hundreds of these systems that have been provided by the Ministry of Defence along with training. They say that they've trained 22,000 Ukrainian military personnel in their use. And as I mentioned there about the European Union now really in a watershed moment deciding to provide hundreds of millions of euros to buy arms systems as well to provide to the Ukrainians. Germany, which has had this stance of not providing arms to certain countries. It's very selective, understandably so, in the decades after the Second World War. Well, it has now decided to arm the Ukrainians direct. Quite how these arms get into Ukraine is another issue. The suggestion being that perhaps they'll go over the border from NATO allies like Poland, but it's by far the most difficult of challenges to do that because the country is not secure. There are Russian forces in many parts of the country, and getting those arms into the hands of the Ukrainian military will not be easy at all.
But, you know, Mark, there's so much made of there won't be European boots on the ground, there won't be British boots on the ground. But you just can't suddenly, have a big Amazon delivery of rocket launchers and whatever. Surely they have to have people to show the Ukrainians how to use this stuff.
Well, as I say, 22,000 Ukrainian military personnel have been trained in their use. So the training has been provided. What the difficulty is that they've been firing them and they're running out of these missile systems. So they need more on the ground. They can provide training from the some of the many thousands of Ukrainian military who've been trained in their use can train other members of the armed forces and even civilian militia in their use. And it's not just the anti-tank missile systems, it's just straightforward ammunition, bullets and alike that they are also in desperate need of, and medical aid. All of that, the UK and other allies hope to try to get across the border to Ukrainian military forces.
And we were looking at some of the images of tanks being taken out by those missiles, Russian tanks being taken out in the front of the pages today. So, Mark, actually, having an effect. Keep us posted, my friend. I will come back to you later on. Thank you very much indeed for the moment.
OK, let's turn our attention to something, I suppose, a little bit more optimistic. A small village in County Durham has quickly rallied to try and help 3 stranded Ukrainian lorry drivers.
Yeah, this is interesting that this was observed. The men are in Langley Moor, right? But it's not known when they'll be able to return home. We've got our North East of England reporter, Rachel Sweeney, has been speaking to them, and here's their story.
Frightened, uncertain and unable to get home. 3 Ukrainian lorry drivers stranded in County Durham as Russia tears apart their home. I spoke to one of the men using a translation app.
We have a war. We came here from Ukraine, waiting for our loads. And now we can't get home to Ukraine again. We cannot get home. I do not know what will happen. I don't know what will happen next.
It was a local postman who noticed the lorries on the roadside.
Friday morning I saw a foreign wagon, which isn't an unusual sight. By yesterday morning when there was another wagon, then you start to think, that's a bit more unusual. And it was then that I noticed the Ukrainian flag. I didn't know what to do, thought, maybe they're in a bad state. So I stopped and said to one of the guys who was stood near the wagons, I said, are you okay? And he looked at me and said, only little English, to which I looked back at him and said, absolutely no Ukrainian.
The men have sleeping facilities inside their lorries, but to remain at the side of the road would have been both dangerous and unsustainable if they are here for the months that they expect to be. A company called JKL has allowed them to park on site for free to stay safe. And that's not all. The whole community has rallied round and pulled together to help. Including the owner of the Little Burn Cafe, who has offered to feed the men for as long as they need.
One guy came down from out of nowhere, just started handing, gave the lads some money, blankets, haircuts, people often bed for the night. One lady texted us to say, did the guys want to go in the hotel for the evening? They're parked up now, they've got nowhere to go really. The compassion and kindness in this little village is a welcome comfort to the men who fear for their homes.
Okay, тут super, тут. Okay.
With so much uncertainty, the only thing these men are sure of is that they have found a community that cares. Rachel Sweeney, GB News, Durham.
And let's now bring you up to date with the other big stories of the day.
The United Nations nuclear watchdog says missiles have hit a radioactive waste disposal site in Kiev overnight. The International Atomic Energy Agency is now monitoring the situation. There's no indication at this stage that any radioactive material has been released.
The government is fast-tracking plans to tackle Russian so-called dirty money. Ministers will table the economic crime bill in Parliament tomorrow. It aims to expose oligarchs who launder wealth through the UK's property market.
New reports revealed that 4 in 10 primary school teachers have to buy books to stock their classrooms because of limited access to budgets. The Centre for Literacy in Primary Education also found 6 in 10 teachers say they have no access to new books.
The TUC is calling for regulation to protect workers from intrusive surveillance. Most people told the union they've been monitored in the past year after transferring to more remote forms of work. The TUC says surveillance can include monitoring emails, using webcams and tracking how much an employer is typing.
A charity has warned that Britain has the highest death rate for lung conditions in Western Europe. Asthma and Lung UK said that over a 7-year period to 2018, 500,000 people in the UK died from lung conditions, including asthma.
Effect is what's going on in Ukraine having on the rest of the world, having with the pound in your pocket. We go to our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, because, Liam, it's becoming more obvious, more apparent that the longer this conflict continues, the more it affects the world economy and the more it affects our domestic shopping habits, for instance. Good morning to you.
Morning, Eamonn. Russia is, of course, a lot more integrated into the world economy than it was during Soviet times. The implications on oil and gas prices are clear. Oil's back up above $100 a barrel this morning, which will unfortunately have knock-on impacts when you try and buy petrol and diesel, and indeed knock-on impacts eventually on our utility bills. But I think this is what will happen because the British government, the whole Western alliance, if you like, is so determined to face up to Vladimir Putin. I think the government here is going to take very considerable steps to try and tackle the cost implications for ordinary households here in the UK of these rising energy prices, of these rising commodity prices. Russia, of course, a huge food exporter as well, a huge exporter of all kinds of vital industrial metals used in all kinds of production of the goods that we buy. So, if you like, I think the government is going to step up its response to this invasion of Ukraine, not just in terms of closing down the SWIFT international payment system and helping the Ukrainian military, as we just heard there from Mark White, but also, if you like, on the home front.
Just on the subject of Mark White, Liam, as you say, this is a forever changing situation. Mark's just got some breaking news coming into us regarding Ukraine. We'll be back to you shortly. Mark.
Yeah, we've just had the latest release from the UK Ministry of Defence. Very helpfully, they have, through their intelligence division, been providing updates on what they see as the situation on the ground in terms of their satellite imagery, their own intelligence assets on the ground, and of course speaking to the Ukrainian military. Now, the latest line from the Ministry of Defence in the UK is that the bulk of the Russian ground forces remain some 30 kilometres north of the capital, Kiev. Their advance has been slowed somewhat, frustrated, we're told, by some fierce fighting around the airfield at Hostomel, which is north of Kiev, about 30 kilometres or so north of Kiev. That was a day one key objective, that airfield at Hostomel, that the Russian forces had planned to take, with a view, of course, of using that as a bridgehead to get in more in the way of Russian military personnel to be able to march on Kiev. Well, that key fighting around Hostomel in particular has, according to the UK Ministry of Defence, frustrated the advance of this convoy, which is still, according to the UK Ministry of Defence, some 30 miles north of the capital, Kiev. They're also saying this morning that there is heavy fighting continuing in Chernihiv, which is about 100 or so miles north of Kiev. Yesterday, they were saying that the fighting was so intense that the Russian military had decided to bypass that city, surround it, and then head towards Kiev itself. Well, they're still reporting fierce fighting in and around Chernihiv itself, and also Kharkiv, which is right to the northeast of the country, about 20 miles or so from the Russian border. Heavy fighting, according to the UK Ministry of Defence, continuing in that area, although crucially, we do not think that those areas have fallen to the Russians as yet. They are still, according to intelligence sources, in Ukrainian military hands. And finally, for this hour, it says from the Ministry of Defence in the UK, logistical failures and staunch Ukrainian resistance continues to frustrate the Russian advance. So some key lines coming out there, given the confusing situation on the ground with what, of course, Russia claims, the Ukrainians claim. It is, from our point of view, always very important to try to impart what we're hearing from official sources here in this country.
OK, thank you very much. Let's bring Liam Halligan back in then. Just before that breaking news, we were speaking to Liam about the financial consequences of the invasion of Ukraine. I'm hoping you're still there for us, Liam. And we were beginning to talk about how this is being felt around the world, not least with the weekend's response to remove Russia from SWIFT. We're seeing the ruble at an all-time low this morning, aren't we?
We are. The ruble plunged almost 30% overnight when it became clear that not just the UK and the US, but also the likes of Japan were going to exclude Russia from SWIFT. That's the Society of Worldwide Interbank Financial Transfers. It's like a global clearinghouse for financial transactions, absolutely crucial to global trade. But even there is some pushback. You've got a lot of people in intelligence services and so on warning that if we exclude Russia from SWIFT completely, then the Russians won't have any skin in that game. SWIFT could then be subject to cyber attacks. This is just speculation and surmise. There's no hard intelligence that this could happen. And also the Russians and the Chinese, between them over recent years, they've been developing their own interbank transfer system that doesn't include America, that doesn't include the UK. And in some sense, that kind of challenges the Western hegemony, if you like, the sort of Western overseeing of the global financial system. Of course, a conflict like this, it's not going to be about boots on the ground, as far as we know, for the UK, but we will use our financial muscle, if you like. But again, that's not without implications for people here if that provokes a response.
OK, Liam, leave it there. Thanks for the update. Really appreciate it.
OK. Some breaking news to bring you in the last few moments, and we're hearing from the Interfax news agency that 2 towns have been taken, according to the Russian forces there, Berdyansk and Enerhoda. That's in the Ukraine's southeastern region, which is crucial because it's near to a nuclear power plant. And in the last few moments, we're hearing that Kharkiv has been put into a curfew there in Ukraine. The eastern Ukrainian city of Kharkiv has imposed a curfew on civilians there. That's just as civilians in Kiev have been coming out of their 3-day-long curfew this morning.
So things developing and moving, and we'll bring you everything that we can on this. So Liam Halligan talking about the economic sanctions and how they're biting and how they're affecting worldwide. Tom Harwood on this with the latest on UK sanctions.
Well, absolutely. On Thursday, it was announced that there would be a tranche of sanctions, really quite significant sanctions, and that they would be happening in short order. Today in Parliament, the first legislation for those sanctions is being laid. Now, this specifically, what we're talking about today in Parliament, is a list of foreign owners of property in the UK. At the moment, many very rich foreign individuals own property in the UK through shell companies, through obscure mechanisms. And what the reforms today will be setting out is that none of those shell companies will be able to operate in the way that they currently do. People who own property in the UK will need to register as an individual with Companies House. So we'll be able to see exactly who owns what property where, and if these shell companies don't declare who actually owns their property, well, there could be some pretty hefty jail sentences coming off the back of that.
It's been promised for a long time, this, though. Since around 2016, we've been promising to clean up Russian dirty money. And I suppose the question is how long it will take to implement that. I know the laws are changing in the next sort of 24 hours or so, but it's not going to be a quick or easy thing to do, is it?
No, and one of the problems is that as soon as you announce a lot of this stuff, and of course all of this was announced in one form or another last week, people have had time to move things around, and that'll be one of the concerns. However, clearly, as you were just talking about with Liam Halligan, the market signals that this sends, even before it's implemented, even before it receives royal assent, the signals that this is driving really upset the apple cart and is having some significant worrying effects, not just in the Russian economy, but particularly in those oligarchs that surround Mr. Putin. And what UK defence sources are sort of saying is that Vladimir Putin relies, his position is there in Russia because of certain key people that prop him up.
Yeah.
And so if those people start to feel wobbly about their global jet-setting lifestyle, about their security of assets, that could destabilise Vladimir Putin himself.
Tom, got to leave it there. Thanks for the update. We'll talk to you later on. See you at 9:30 as well. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, Russia will still be able to bid for the World Cup and the other big sports stories with Paul Coit doing that. First, here's the weather. And looking ahead to that, it's looking rather cloudy right across the country. Outbreaks of heavy rain, slowly moving north and east. The rain will become persistent and often heavy across southwest England towards lunchtime. Temperatures around 10 or 11 Celsius, turning breezy around the coasts as well.
Dry and bright across southeast England and London with some morning sunshine, but clouds amount to increasing sounds from the west. Temperatures widely in double figures.
Wales, here it could be a cloudy morning for you. Rain spreading across the country, turning heavy over higher ground. And then the Midlands.
After a fairly bright start, they will see increasing amounts of cloud with the risk of some patchy rain moving in by the time we get to midday. Temperatures there around 9 Celsius.
Similar weather conditions across northern England. Cloud increasing quickly with outbreaks of rain moving in from the southwest. Some drier interludes towards Newcastle. Temperatures an average for the end of February. Sunshine and scattered showers will continue across northern parts of Scotland as well.
Yeah, cloudier further south there with increasing amounts of rain moving in. Temperatures around 9 Celsius for Edinburgh. Northern Ireland should also escape most of the rain today with some bright or sunny spells, but also a scattering of showers. Temperatures there around 9 degrees Celsius.
The band of rain will continue to move east as we head through the rest of the day. Drier in the west later, and that is how the weather is shaping up on this Monday. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, if you didn't see the League Cup final yesterday at Wembley between Chelsea and Liverpool, you may well have missed one of the greatest penalty shootouts ever. Paul Coit will now talk us through it. So 11 players on each side, everyone took a penalty.
Do you want me to go through every 22?
Whoa.
Okay, we'll start
well,
with
basically,
the first one.
right, odd man out then. Where did it all go wrong?
Well, the thing is, penalties are getting really good. I'm going to ask you a question first. Yeah. Do you think it's a lottery? And there's always this thing where people say, Oh, it's just a lottery. Because I think there's no way it's a lottery. It's a psychological battle. There's so much to a penalty shootout than just, you know...
Well, I always remember, if you've ever taken a penalty on a football pitch, and I've done it at Coventry City, I did it at Manchester United, and it is such a long way. You look, and you go to kick that ball, and you've got no power in your foot to
Did you do the whole walk with the ball under the arm?
No. That's a bit scary. That's a bit scary, that, isn't it?
Pass out halfway
the walk
through.
of shame. Yeah. Gosh, no. Nervous. Respect to anybody who takes one, but beautifully taken. I mean, all of them beautifully taken.
Everyone was spot on. See, the big story about this is Kepa Arrizabalaga.
Yes, which
the
wasn't
goalkeeper.
him.
Yeah,
that was a picture of Bielsa from Leeds.
Okay, that's never to be confused there. So Edward Mendy is the Chelsea goalkeeper. He's had a terrific game. I mean, he's had a really, really good game. But Kepa is actually a penalty specialist.
Yeah.
So it was obviously worked out beforehand that Thomas Tuchel, the Chelsea manager, says, this is what's going to happen. Should we go to extra time or should we go to penalties? Then you'll come in goal with a minute to go.
Yeah, but he didn't mean he was a penalty specialist in taking them. He was a penalty specialist in saving them.
Exactly the point. So he's got in goal. They changed over. He hasn't saved any. So he's faced 11. But then it's come down to the fact of, now he's got to take the last penalty.
He's got to take everybody on the pitch has scored, and he's the last one, the
so
late
there we
substitute.
are. So their goalkeeper has taken one, and so he's running up, and he's got to score. Now, all I can say is that ball is still in the air. That's all I can say at this point. He hits it.
You could have taken a better one, Isabel.
But I tell you what, there was a lot of power behind it, but it flew over the top. But it was you're right, it was a terrific penalty shootout. Yeah. And the more we seem to see, the longer they seem to be. I thought they'd get the managers involved, and they'd end up taking one.
How many goals were disallowed through VAR?
3 goals.
Three goals. It was amazing. So what was all the good news? Then we get into the politics of all of that.
I mean, it felt appropriate to me anyway that Chelsea didn't win on a day or on a weekend like this. You know, the celebrations in Chelsea, just as Abramovich is stepping back. I mean, it's been a difficult weekend for Chelsea fans, hasn't it?
It's a really difficult one to call, isn't it? And exactly what is going on as far as... If you're a Chelsea fan, you're going to be worried about your future because there's so much of Abramovich's money which is in there. We're talking billions that's been spent. So he's stepped back, and so the stewardship of Chelsea is now being looked after by the trustees of the club's charitable foundation. Now, stewardship doesn't mean that they are now taking over. That just means that they are basically the caretakers.
Yeah.
So whether it's the fact that Abramovich, well, obviously they're feeling the heat and they're thinking something's happening here as far as he's concerned. He's linked with Putin. Does that mean that his assets are going to be frozen and therefore that's going to affect the club? So maybe we'll read the room here and then you can step back. It's a stewardship. So he still owns the club, but someone else is in the running of it, and they're the charitable.
I'm of the opinion, yes, do you know, if that happened at Manchester United, I would be running United.
Oh.
It would be.
Because I'm on the charitable.
You'd love that.
Point.
Stop.
Honestly, they would win the Champions League in the end, wouldn't they? Honestly.
Look at this. You see, I think FIFA and UEFA, in response to Russia and what's gone on in Ukraine, I don't think they've been hard enough. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that Spartak Moscow is still there competing in a European competition. The sanctions should just be, if you're from Russia, you're not in.
They're hedging their bets. You've got someone like Gianni Infantino, who is the president of FIFA. He's been given this friendship medal from Putin a couple of years ago, and this was after the World Cup.
The chief executive of Gazprom sits on the FIFA board, doesn't he?
They're sitting there and they're thinking, well, listen, how is this going to play out? How is this going to affect me? I'm running FIFA. He's going to be my pal because it's good for me that he's in charge. But what do we do? Because I don't want to cheese him off by then going against Russia by saying anything.
But Gazprom is paying the bill.
They have to do this. They absolutely have to do this. So basically, they're allowing Russia to play in the World Cup. There's a World Cup qualifier coming up against Poland, which is at the end of this month. So Russia now will play in that. Poland aren't going to, but that's another story. We'll come to that. But they have to go under a different name. So it's just like with the drugs violations in the Olympics. I mean, this is a little more serious than that.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a hell of a lot more serious.
Just in a different form.
That's what they're doing.
Breaking the rules, being disdainful to everybody else.
Oh, I know. We'll have no flag. We'll have no national anthem. Therefore, it's not a Russian team. Of course it is. Why can't they throw them out? Because they're terrified.
What's Poland doing then?
Well, Poland have said, we won't play the game.
Right, good for them.
And the great thing about the Poland Football Association is not only have they said, we won't play the game, if FIFA throw us out of the World Cup, then so be it. We don't want to be in a World Cup. So now it's up to every other football association, like England and Scotland and Ireland, said we don't want to play Russia, and they're not going to either.
Sport has a huge role, doesn't it, though? Soft power. We think about apartheid, and a lot of people attribute sport to being, you know, the start of the end of apartheid was down to sport.
Absolutely. There's always the argument, you know, you can't mix politics and sport, but unfortunately this is life, and they are going to be intertwined. And in a situation like this, everything has to be done, and FIFA are just, they'll end up throwing them out, I'm sure about that, because of the pressure.
I just want to squeeze in the Bielsa reign at Leeds is over. The dream is over. It sort of went a bit wrong.
It did go a bit wrong. You know, the expansive football, the excitement.
But he's loved.
He is loved. And the thing is, he sat on the bucket, didn't he? The upturned bucket. I just feel sorry for the Leeds shop that have now got all these buckets they've got to flog off at half price, unless Jesse Marsh, who is... He's a very elegant character. He would not be the type that would sit on a bucket. He looks like he's going to come in. Did very well at Salzburg. Wasn't good at Leipzig, but he's an American. So I don't know whether it's going to be a Ted Lasso situation of him coming in at Leeds. I don't know. But it looks like he's the man to replace him. Whether it's going to work, whether it's too late, we will see.
When you were a kid, did you learn that song? There's a hole in your bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza.
Yeah, there is.
Did you?
Yeah,
Do you know that? Well, should we sing that? Because Isabel won't have a clue what we're talking about.
I know that song.
Do you?
Yeah.
But how
There's
many
a hole
times...
in your bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. Anyway.
It goes on for about 3 days. I don't know, with the being replaced, and that's it.
Paul, thanks for that. Really appreciate that. Big weekend of sport all round it was. Thank you very much indeed. We'll take a break there. We're going to have another look at the papers. Major General Chip Chapman and the Chief Executive of Demos, the think tank, Polly Mackenzie, right after this. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Let's take a look at your Monday morning newspaper front pages. First of all, The Times leading with President Putin putting his nuclear forces on alert. The Russian leader has claimed it's in response to NATO aggression. Metro shows a Russian tank on fire. This is after a missile attack near the city of Sumy, northeast Ukraine yesterday. Here's the Express. It says it's the free world versus Putin. European nations have stood united in closing the skies to Russian planes and promising to deliver weapons to Ukraine. The Eye focuses on what it calls dash to the borders as queues stretch for 25 miles at some crossings as people try to flee. The paper says 368,000 have fled to safety so far. OK, let's go inside your newspapers now. Joining us to take us through them are Major General Chip Chapman and the Chief Executive of the think tank Demos, Polly Mackenzie. Welcome back to both of you. Chip, let's start with you. This story inside The Sun, page 2. Ukraine putting up this heroic defence against Russia, which quite frankly dwarfs them in size. But the Russians perhaps being surprised at the sort of resistance they've encountered.
I think they have, and they haven't achieved any of their objectives yet. But we shouldn't get carried away. It's only D+4. And the Russians have time, they will sequence their tactical engagements to go for their operational objectives. And Kiev is really the source of all the strength. It's what we would call the centre of gravity. If they can knock Kiev over by either encircling it and breaking the will of the resistors there, both the military and the people, then the Russians might still succeed. Now, what we're seeing at the moment is incredible primary group cohesion, both amongst the Russian military, the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian people. It's both matehood and cohesion within the military that you're seeing. Normally, people fight for their mates. Here, we're seeing them fight for their nation. Both of those are two powerful motivators.
And you're saying Russia has got to see if it can knock Kiev over. They've then got to hold Kiev after that. And your expertise is head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence. Tough task?
It is a tough task, but what they'll try and do is go for some sort of ceasefire if they've achieved that, and a negotiated settlement. And what I think they might do is try and do something like they did what happened with France in 1940. So you have a zone occupée that is to the east of the Dnieper River, including Ukraine, where they put a puppet regime in there, and you have a force libre, the sort of Vichy France, to the west. Now, that will still emasculate Ukraine, but will still lead to a war after the war. There will be a partisan resistance. There are 150 territorial battalions there. If in width and breadth they can take on the Russians, they still have a chance strategically in the longer term.
Chip, a lot of people are talking about the lack of progress the Russian army is making, and you mentioned Second World War, the German invasion of France. And people said, I remember seeing a commentator last week saying, the Russians still have to refuel, they still have to sleep, they still have to eat. This is what slows up. Do you know why it didn't slow Hitler up in his blitzkrieg? Do you know? He commandeered a drugs factory, right? So whatever this drugs factory was in Berlin, and he fed his whole troops these special, what would you call them? Uppers.
Or no?
Yeah, sort of, these pills. And the German army ran for 3 or 4 days completely without sleep or eating or anything. And that's why what should have taken them 10, 13 days to invade took them 2.5 days.
Generally, we would say that after initial shock and surprise, things regress to a norm in warfare. That's what you're seeing. The Russians were not successful in using any shock and surprise. And then things regress to, you can only progress by X kilometres a day because of either your logistics or resistance.
Yeah.
That is what we're seeing in action.
And can I just ask you, before we move on to the next story, about refugees, because all of the front pages reflecting this threat from Putin yesterday about raising his nuclear deterrence to being on high alert. Is that a sign of desperation? And as you say, as we move away from this shock and awe stage in the war, are we likely to see these thermobaric or hyperbaric missiles, which are terribly devastating, which will also have awful effects on civilians as well?
No, I think you will. I think you will see the Russians escalating, particularly around Kharkov and Kiev, in order to put themselves in a position where they have a stronger negotiating hand for the ceasefire, which will probably come at some stage. It might be in 3 days, it might be in 3 weeks, but it will happen. And indeed, Zelensky said on day 2 that they'll have to come to an agreement at some stage. It's what is in that agreement, because that is what floundered the Minsk II agreement about what is the sovereign position of Ukraine. And one thing the Ukrainians will not give up is their sovereignty.
The social demographics of all of this, Polly, and just a couple of papers here. This heart-wrenching story which has been repeated a number of times. A father putting his child on a train as a refugee. The father stays back to fight, which is what he has to do. And the Eye reporting on a dash to the borders.
Huge numbers of people are on the move, trying to get out of Ukraine into neighbouring countries like Poland, for example. Actually, lots of people are on the move to Ukraine as well, in particular men who are wanting to return to fight or They've picked up stories of mothers trying to get back to their kids. I think the question for the UK is how generous and open-hearted are we going to be to these refugees? What's the appropriate way to deal with people who are absolutely fleeing deadly peril in ways that cannot be doubted?
No.
Yesterday, a government minister suggested that Ukrainians could apply for fruit picking visas, which just feels completely out of step with where we should be. The government has moved a bit. They're now saying, which I think is very welcome, that any Ukrainian settled in the UK can bring immediate family members, though that tends to mean children under the age of 18, or your parent if you're a child under the age of 18, or your spouse. And that means that elderly parents, children over the age of 18, siblings are absolutely excluded from that, we think.
Girlfriends and boyfriends.
Girlfriends and boyfriends, absolutely. And so I would like to see us match what Ireland did, Portugal did, and now the EU has done unilaterally. Let's just say anybody with a Ukrainian passport is welcome here for 3 years, which is what the EU has said. You cannot, I think, ask people to go through queues and processing to apply normal visa standards. It's right for the UK to have a visa process in normal times. Of course it is. This is a war. People are fleeing for their lives. It is madness to ask them to fill out stupid forms that, providing identity documents and proof of income documents and proof of English language documents.
Fled their homes with no notice. In the middle
some
of
of them, some of their homes have been literally bombed to pieces.
Well, Donald Trump, I want you to give me a take on him. This is in the Times, and the former president is portraying himself as what?
The saviour of Western civilization. So Donald Trump was speaking at the CPAC, a very important conservative conference in the United States, making clear that he absolutely intends to run as president again, launching an assault on President Biden. And it does seem that he has the support, majority support at least, of delegates at CPAC. And he is pitching himself as the answer to Russian aggression, though we know, of course, that in the past he's been an admirer of President Putin.
Yeah.
He's been aggressively pro and aggressively.
I mean, just last week he was admiring of Putin.
A line that I believe Nigel Farage has used as well, which is sort of admiring him as an operator. But to me, that's like admiring, the scalpel tools of a serial killer. In the end, you have to stand against these guys.
Yeah. Well, look, the next time we come back in an hour's time with you guys, Chip's going to be talking about if you're physically fit in middle age, you're less likely to develop Alzheimer's, OK? So what you've got to do is 2.5 hours of brisk walking a week, right? That is what the target has to be. We'll talk about that next time. Guys, for the moment, thank you both very much indeed. Now.
But it is now time for On Your Doorstep.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Thanks, guys. Sorry.
So we're going to go to London now, and our reporter Alice Porter, she's in Dagenham talking to people about the issues affecting their community. And of course, I suppose on the top of everybody's minds this Monday morning, Alice, is the issue of Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been speaking with a lot of residents. I was actually here on Wednesday. I've come back today, and so many people are really concerned about the situation that is really escalating in Ukraine, and many people really worried about it. But of course, there are other issues that many people who are here. I'm on the Becontree estate, which is the largest council estate, not only in the UK, but in fact in Europe. And of course, there are all sorts of issues that many people here are worried about. Now, I'm on a sort of cul-de-sac sort of area, but I've been told it's not a cul-de-sac, it's called a banjo. So there I am. I'm getting into the local lingo of anyone who lives on the Becontree estate, and I'm here to meet someone pretty special. So, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Peter. You're live on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. How are you doing?
Doing well. Weather looks nice. It's nice to see you.
Very nice to see you too. Can I come in? Is that all right?
Yes.
Thank you so much. What a lovely home. This is beautiful. Now, I know you have a beautiful garden. Are we all right to go sort of straight through, see? Because I know you're the keen gardener.
Follow me.
There we go.
Not the ideal time. Summer is brilliant.
Oh, wow. Look at this. This looks like your pride and joy, Peter.
Oh, yeah. Spend a lot of time out here. Yeah.
This is absolutely stunning. Let's just go through here. Thank you. So how long have you been living on the Becontree estate for?
Since 1943.
That is quite a long time, if you don't mind.
That's right. That shows my age, doesn't it?
And what brought you to living here on the estate?
Well, we were bombed out at Poplar. We stayed, at that particular time, we were staying at Pitsea, which was pretty raw, so we were safer there than being at Poplar. And during that time, the house in Poplar was bombed. So when it came back to get a house, there was nowhere else to go, and we were offered this house in Dagenham. And of course, you know, at that particular time, these particular houses originally were for homes for heroes. During the 1914 war, these were built in 1930. So these were ideal for people that actually were bombed out and had nowhere to go. So we came here in 1943, like coming into the country from Poplar. And as children we played in the streets, no cars about. So that was great. We used to play in the roads. So that was in 1943.
Amazing. So amazing to think that Peter came to the Becontree estate after being sort of bombed out of the East End. I mean, one can't help but thinking about these terrible images that we're seeing in Ukraine at the moment of people sadly very much going through the very same thing that you went through in World War II. I mean, as someone who's sort of gone through that, I mean, what do you think of this latest news?
Absolutely devastating for those people in Ukraine. Absolutely. Especially the children. I can remember as a child in this particular area watching flying bombs coming over and being terrified and going inside and getting under the Morrison shelter for safety. But it must be devastating for them, especially as the children. I think of the children because I came here as a child. So.
And you've still got your identity card from when you were a child.
Right.
Let's have a look. This is pretty amazing. I mean, look at this. That is just, look at that. Wow.
So you can see where we were in Wade Street in Poplar, and we came to 36 Dagenham Avenue in around about September 44, around about the latter part of the war.
That's absolutely. I'm just going to have a bit more of a explore. I'm going to ignore the please keep off the grass sign. I'm going to go right over the grass because I know in terms of sort of the community, you do loads in the area with sort of gardening and all sorts of things. I mean, as someone who's lived on the estate for such a long time, I mean, how's it kind of changed? How's the kind of community changed since you've been here?
It is a multicultural society, but not just Dagenham or Barking. It's lots of places in the same situation. Things have changed, and I have quite a few neighbours around here that, you know, I get on very well with, different nationalities. And living in a banjo, we're living closer together. And so we foster this community spirit. I've always tried to foster community spirit, whether in fact in the brass band world or starting a garden club. It's always been my aim to bring people together as a community. And this has got, well, we're especially here, we've got a good community around us in the banjo. I say banjo, other areas, posher areas, we say cul-de-sacs. Banjo.
I was telling them earlier about the local language that I was on strict instructions to call it a banjo. So I've managed to get that in. So thank you. Are there any other sort of local language or any other quirks that you need to make sure if I'm here in Becontree that I've got to make sure I go away and make sure I always know?
Right. Okay. Well, obviously, in fact, a lot of the houses used to look the same when they were all council, but Margaret Thatcher changed that as soon as people started buying. They developed their own style, and so, you know, the houses are more noticeable. One particular time, in fact, we used to call it Corned Beef City. You've heard this before.
Are we in Corned Beef City?
We certainly are.
Okay.
From an aerial view, you would find all these houses look like corned beef tins.
I'm with you. And I know, before we go, I know out on the street there, lots of people were doing sort of clapping for heroes, but you weren't quite clapping for carers when it was during the pandemic. You were doing something slightly different, weren't you?
We're doing something slightly different, and the people around us enjoyed it. What happened, of course, on the Thursday nights, my son, who plays tube and I play horn, we used to select certain tunes which were appropriate, like We'll Never Walk Alone, We'll Meet Again, and we used to play out, and people got used to us playing, and they seemed to enjoy it, because I got a message, "It's what you're playing tonight."
Did you have any requests?
Yeah, I mean, in particular, You'll Never Walk Alone. It must be I noticed, in fact, that several football grounds sung that over the weekend for the people of Ukraine.
Well, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, You'll Never Walk Alone. It's, I suppose it's a message that many people are thinking about at the moment. Peter, thank you so much for letting me come into your home, and particularly your absolutely stunning garden. I'm going to have to come back here in the summer, if that's okay, when it's all in bloom, if I'm welcome to.
You're going away with plants.
Oh, well, in that case, I'm definitely coming back. No, I'm going to be heading back to another part of the Beckentry estate and just speaking to some more people. I mean, as you can tell here, some absolutely amazing history of the people who've been here on this estate. This estate is over 100 years old, and it's some absolutely amazing people I've had the privilege of meeting with this morning.
Well, it's a lively estate. It's community-centric. Thanks, Alice, for finding great characters like the one you have there, and hearing the stories and how big-hearted people are as well. It's also nice to see you, because it's normally dark at this time of the morning, and it's lovely to see. What time's the sun come up?
It's 6:45 now. The sun started coming up, so we get to see you all morning. It's fabulous.
Excellent, excellent. Alice Porter there in Dagenham, thank you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be covering all the latest Ukraine developments. Top of the hour. It's 2 minutes to 8. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukrainian President Zelensky agrees to peace talks with Russia at the border with Belarus, but says he holds little hope of any meaningful solution.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on Monday, the 28th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Coming up this morning, Ukraine will hold peace talks with Russia after President Putin put his nuclear forces on high alert.
The UN General Assembly will hold an emergency special session today for the first time since 1982.
Well, meanwhile, the Prime Minister has told a Ukrainian church in London that immediate family members fleeing Ukraine will be able to join their relatives here in the UK.
We'll be speaking to Armed Forces Minister James Heappey about all the latest developments this morning.
And as always, you can join in any of the discussions we're having. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet at gbnews. The whole Ukrainian situation, we're right across it. We've got Mark White looking for the breaking news, and here's the latest. Mark.
Yes, we've just been hearing from the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, some significant lines that have come out from him. Of course, Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, raised an eyebrow or two over the weekend with comments that she made, apparently supporting those who would decide to go to Ukraine to start fighting. Well, according to Ben Wallace, he has said that he doesn't advise people to go across and to fight in Ukraine, but if they are determined to do so and they have military experience, he is advising them to contact the Ukrainian embassy. Now, there are concerns about whether this would actually be legal for UK citizens to go over and to fight in Ukraine. Well, what we understand is, of course, with Syria, back in 2015, there was special legislation that was put into place that stopped UK citizens going to that country, and that was mainly to stop them joining up with jihadi groups over there. But it had the effect of also ensnaring some former British military personnel who went over to fight with the Kurds and the Yazidis in Syria. Well, now there is no such legislation in place with regards to Ukraine, so it doesn't seem as though it would be illegal for those with military experience, former soldiers and the like, who are determined to go across there, to go and answer that call from President Zelensky when he called for a foreign legion to be created to go to fight in his country. So that news, as I say, I think it's significant from the UK Defence Secretary. If people are determined to go and answer that call and help President Zelensky, then they are advised, according to the UK Defence Secretary, providing, he says, they've got former military experience, to contact the Ukrainian embassy with a view to seeing what they could do. Another very significant line to come out from the UK Defence Secretary. This is with regard to the weapons systems that are being supplied to the Ukrainians. The UK, you'll remember, has provided hundreds of these shoulder-launched anti-tank weapons systems in recent months and provided training to more than 20,000 Ukrainian military personnel. Well, Ben Wallace has just confirmed that they've actually managed to smuggle more weapons systems into Ukraine since the fighting began. There was some real concern about how the West, how the UK and other countries that have said they will supply weapons systems to President Zelensky's armed forces, who are desperate for more anti-tank and anti-air defence systems, those shoulder-carried systems that are much more mobile, but they're running out and they need more of these weapon systems on the ground. Well, the British Defence Secretary now confirming that the UK has managed to smuggle these weapon systems, or at least some weapon systems, into Ukraine since the fighting began, and many more weapon systems, we understand, are en route to that area.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate those updates. We'll be crossing back to you again very shortly. We go now to General Lord Richard Dannett, former British Army Chief, with his thoughts on that. Lord Dannett, you heard there that President Zelensky's call for a foreign legion, and certainly the British Defence Secretary and the Foreign Secretary, no objections to that legion coming from here. As a professional soldier, what would your view be on that?
Well, I think my view is to follow the advice of the Defence Secretary. If there are British citizens who have got military training who feel that they want to join the fight in Ukraine, and I can totally understand that, because yes, the fight is in Ukraine, but really what the Ukrainians are doing is fighting for democracy and for freedom. So I can understand if people feel they want to go and do that, but then follow the advice of the Defence Secretary and get in touch with the Ukrainian embassy. I think that's probably the best route in, rather than try and make their own way, whichever way they can. I think try and do it officially would make a certain degree of sense.
Lord Dan, I also want to get your reaction to that breaking news that Mark just brought to us about the ability of British weapons to have been smuggled into Ukraine successfully now. We heard over the weekend, didn't we, President Zelensky saying he needed ammunition, not a ride. It's been a big challenge to try and give the support that we've been pledging, but has it been able to reach the people that need it at the moment? How big is that challenge? And, you know, ongoing, what are the risks it could fall into, for example, Russian hands if not managed carefully?
Well, the words from the West have been very much in support of Ukraine, and that's fine as far as words go. Economic sanctions are fine as far as they go, and I think they are beginning to bite to an extent. But actually what the Ukrainians need is physical, practical support in their fight, which, as I said just now, yes, it's their fight in Ukraine, but really they are fighting against autocracy, they are fighting for democracy, they're fighting for their chosen way of life, which actually is our chosen way of life as well. So I think every which way that the British government can find way of getting weapons to them, particularly, as you said, the light anti-tank weapons or short-range anti-aircraft weapons, these are the sort of things that the Ukrainians need. And let's face it, the Ukrainians are doing a half-decent job. I think the problem for the Russians is that they haven't been very straight, as far as we can tell, with their troops, many of whom are conscripts. They were taking part in major live-firing exercises on the other side of the Ukrainian borders for quite some time. They've now crossed over, and I'm not convinced that they've been properly briefed as to what they're doing, why they're doing it, and who they're fighting. Many reports have come in of Russian-speaking Ukrainians who are talking to the Russian conscripts and saying, "Oi, we're your brothers, don't fight us." So I think there's a lot of confusion on the ground, and well done the Ukrainians.
Well, meanwhile, we're talking about various weapons and weapons being smuggled in. Then there is the nuclear weapon and the option of that raised by President Putin, that his nuclear force should be on high alert. What do you make of that?
Well, this is the kind of language that's most unhelpful, and I'm putting that diplomatically. When in the days before the invasion started, Putin bullied, intimidated, talked about the conventional forces they had on the border and that they would attack. Well, they have attacked, and as I was saying just now, the attack hasn't gone particularly well. So he's upping the ante in terms of threatening, intimidating and bullying by reminding the world that Russia is a very sophisticated nuclear-armed state. Now, it would be quite unthinkable to any rational person if he was to even consider a demonstrative use of a nuclear weapon in a faraway place just to show what they could do. I think the biggest worry is Vladimir Putin, bunkered down in the Kremlin, after 20 years in power, is probably beginning to lose the plot. He is becoming so dictatorial, so autocratic, that I'm afraid nothing could be off the agenda. Rational people thought he wouldn't invade. He has invaded. Question, is he still rational? Worry, he's got nuclear weapons at his disposal.
Yeah, so we can't underestimate him, and we do so at our peril. And I suppose, as you say then, the world really has changed in the last 5 days, and not least in the response from Germany in the last 24 hours, upping their defence spend more than any time in your career, I'm sure.
Well, this is right. I mean, Germany, for all the obvious historical reasons, has been very backward-leaning in getting involved in overseas interventions. Yes, they supported us to an extent in Iraq and Afghanistan, but they tried to keep out of the way. But we have seen quite a change in German attitudes. The pausing of Nord Stream 2 was quite significant. They haven't cancelled it, they've just paused it. But the fact that they are now supplying weapons to Ukraine, this is a significant change. It's welcome as far as the Ukrainians are concerned. But as you say, Isabel, a distinct change in the German position.
Lord Dannett, thanks for your take. Thanks for your analysis. Really appreciate it. General Lord Richard Dannett, their former head of the British Army. Thank you very much indeed. Lord Dannett was mentioning the advice of the Defence Secretary and the Foreign Secretary. If you feel inclined to fight on behalf of the Ukraine country and forces, the place to go is the Ukraine Embassy in London. Paul Hawkins is there for us already this morning. Tell us more, Paul.
Yeah, extraordinary, that news from Ben Wallace, Eamonn, that, you know, if you want to come and fight for Ukraine, if you have combat experience, then to turn up here at or at least get in touch with the Ukrainian embassy. I have asked to speak to the Ukrainian ambassador this morning, so if they come back to us, I will of course let you know. But that is an extraordinary thing to say, given that the official government position is that we're not going to put troops on the ground. Yes, we're going to send weapons. Yes, we're going to send money. But if you're in the army, you can't go and fight on behalf of Ukraine with the Ukrainians. But if you have combat experience and you're a civilian, you can get in touch with the Ukrainian embassy and potentially go and fight there. So an extraordinary thing to hear this morning. I'll bring you any reaction I get to that from the Ukrainian embassy here. But yeah, I'm here this morning because of the visa scheme that was announced late last night by the Home Office in terms of helping Ukrainian nationals get their family over to the UK. There's been a change in policy on that. Now, before the change in policy, only those who were dependents of Ukrainian nationals that were settled here in the UK were guaranteed to be able to come to the UK. As of late last night, if you're only available to spouses, unmarried partners of at least 2 years, parents or their children if one is under 18, or adult relatives if they are carers. If you qualify for any of those categories, you can apply through the free visa scheme to come and settle here in the UK. But there has been some criticism that that scheme doesn't go far enough, given the EU have said that all Ukrainians, irrespective of whether they have family and friends who reside in an EU country, can resettle there. They can bypass the refugee scheme and they can settle there for 3 years at the moment. So some criticism that the government hasn't gone far enough in helping Ukrainian refugees this morning.
OK, Paul, thanks very much indeed. I just want to bring our viewers another breaking line. This from China in the last few moments, according to Reuters news agency. Their foreign ministry has come out in response to Russian President Vladimir Putin putting the country's nuclear deterrence on high alert. And they've said that all sides should remain calm and avoid further escalation. That's the latest from Beijing this morning. Let's bring in our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who joined us in the studio this morning. Look, we've seen the significant increase in ramping up, if you like, of rhetoric over the weekend. We're hearing developments all the time. The latest from Ben Wallace this morning, that UK citizens with combat experience should go to the Ukrainian embassy and offer their services. This is fast pace moving. Where do we see this going today, Tom?
Absolutely, it is certainly fast-paced moving, and of course those comments from Ben Wallace build upon what the Foreign Secretary was saying yesterday. Ultimately, there are different avenues by which the British government can act. We are, like every NATO power, reluctant to ourselves as a state get involved in that conflict in Ukraine, obviously, despite the calls from people within Ukraine, because of course that would risk a nuclear power fighting a nuclear power. And after what we heard over the weekend from Vladimir Putin, that is a scary prospect. But what we can expect is more action more quickly, particularly when it comes to the tool that we have that is potentially the most effective in terms of a global context, and that is sanctions. What we are doing today is putting forward legislation in Parliament that would squeeze out dirty money from London, particularly property money. At the moment, many Russian
At the moment, a lot of people say, why the heck hadn't they been doing that for years?
Oh, I'm
Why
sure.
is it taking so long?
This is finally, I think a lot of these actions, actually, that many people have been calling for since 2014, when, let's not forget, in 2014, Russia incurred upon Ukrainian sovereign territory, snatched Crimea, started this war. In fact, in some of those regions in the east of Ukraine, plain-clothed Russian soldiers have been alleged to have been there for the past 8 years. And potentially, the weak response from the West, from Europe, from Britain, from America, in response to that 2014 invasion, emboldened Vladimir Putin to do what he decided to do last week. Potentially, we are only just waking up to the consequences of that weakness 8 years ago.
But the problem with this legislation tackling dirty money, I suppose, is that it's very slow pace. I mean, it's very quick to remove Russia, say, from SWIFT, as we've seen over the weekend. But how do you actually evict Russian money from property in London, often hugely expensive properties as well. I mean, that's not an easy process, even if the laws are suddenly in place.
It's not. There are two things that are happening today. Number one, Companies House is becoming a register of these companies. Obviously, with property, you can see that there's a physical property there. You can demand to know who owns it, and many of the times these are owned by sort of obscure shell companies. Well, each of those shell companies will need to declare who owns them, where the money comes from, and if they don't, that can be frozen. They won't be allowed to be bought or sold, and the person in charge of that shell company could face up to 5 years in prison. So that's a big change. But also, something else is the unexplained wealth orders. These are a mechanism that already exists to investigate where money might have come from. They're becoming significantly strengthened today within the National Crime Agency. There'll be the ability to investigate these cases without significant liability on the British state, and that will, in many ways, encourage far more of these investigations to go forward.
OK, Tom, thank you.
Let's bring you up to date with the latest headlines. The United Nations nuclear watchdog says missiles have hit a radioactive waste disposal site in Kiev overnight. The International Atomic Energy Agency is now monitoring the situation. No indication that any radioactive material has been released as of yet.
The government is fast-tracking plans to tackle Russian dirty money. Ministers will table the economic crime bill in Parliament tomorrow, as Tom was just explaining, which aims to expose oligarchs who launder their wealth through the UK's property markets.
A new report has revealed that 4 in 10 primary school teachers have to buy books to stock their classrooms because of limited access to budgets. The Centre for Literacy in Primary Education also found 6 in 10 teachers saying they have no access to new books.
The TUC is calling for regulation to protect workers from intrusive surveillance. Most people told the union they've been monitored in the past year after transferring to more remote forms of work. The TUC says surveillance can include monitoring emails, using webcams and tracking how much an employer is typing.
Or maybe an unemployed. At a protest in London over the weekend, members of the public sent out messages of support to Ukraine whilst urging the British government to allow refugees into the country.
Here's what people were saying.
You might have thought COVID was your Churchill moment. This is your Churchill moment. Support the people of Ukraine. Arm them, welcome them in. We will give them safe haven. We're Britain. This is what we do. We are the party of freedom. The Conservative Party is the party of freedom. We must support Ukraine and we must welcome them into our borders and give them. We don't need visas. We need to welcome them with open arms.
Stop the war. Pull his army out of Ukraine because there is no place for them there.
I would like to say, English people, that Ukraine destroyed own nuclear weapon after Chernobyl catastrophe. I am very naive Ukrainian woman, thought that we are like Switzerland, that nobody touch us. But at the moment, Russian bombed our Ukrainian peaceful town and our capital Kiev without any reason. And my message to Putin, we don't scare you. We are everywhere in the world. Everybody support us. Thank you, UK, to support us, Ukrainian people.
Now here's Anna Desic, who is from the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain. Anna, thanks for your time this morning. Busy time, worrying time, awful time for you. Can you first of all tell me about you and your situation? Do you have family still in Ukraine?
Yes, I do have family. I spoke to my cousin on WhatsApp yesterday just to ensure that she was okay. She's based in Lviv, and they were concerned that their apartment block is near a tank station. So they have actually removed to the edge of Lviv, and she's moved in with her daughter. But yesterday she did say people are really leaving Lviv in droves. So now they're considering what they have to do.
So, Anna, what do you have to do with the Association of Ukrainians in GB? What is the need? What are you appealing for?
Yes, I'm the deputy chair of the Association of Ukrainians in Britain. We did set up a GoFundMe appeal. We set this up actually a couple of weeks ago because we could see that there might be something happening, and it started off very slowly. But yesterday, I have to say, I was looking at the figures. 9,000 people actually donated to our appeal on GoFundMe. That was Help Ukraine Emergency Appeal. And looking at the figures, yesterday, almost 500,000 donated in terms of pounds, and today it's at 732,000 pounds. So we've actually been in touch with 2 key aid agencies in Ukraine who had already pre-prepared stocks, medical kits, that sort of thing. So at the moment, donating money to whatever funds, I know Save the Children Fund, all the large charities are also beginning their appeals, is very important. At the moment, we're trying to get some resources together to get additional medicines and so on that we can maybe take to the border. At the moment, we're trying to just support the aid agencies in terms of more sort of hygienic kits and that sort of thing. So we're not collecting those at the moment, but we'll see if the situation changes.
Well, I mean, your appeal has moved very quickly. I heard details of it through a parents' WhatsApp group associated with my child's school. They were raising awareness. There was Ukrainians in my child's school, and their parents wanted other parents to be aware of what you were doing, and had a long list of what money would buy: blankets, as you say, sanitary support for people at borders, and of course things like medical supplies. We're hearing, aren't we, reports of women giving birth in these situations and people having to pack up their homes with no notice, leaving all their worldly possessions behind. Hugely emotive. Have you been heartened by the support that you've had, and how much more help do you need?
Well, absolutely. It's been phenomenal since Thursday, since the invasion. The fund has gone through the roof. We initially had a presentation from the first aid agency that we're supporting, and they said they were on the ground in 2014. Invasion in the east of Ukraine, and they said, there were busloads of people fleeing. They were coming off the buses in just their pajamas. And so this time we felt we really need to make sure we're pre-prepared. So things like basic medical kits, also hospital kits. So, for example, if you're a diabetic or have a heart condition, something like that as well, where do you get your medication? So it's also basic humanitarian needs that they're providing, as well, obviously, as people who have been injured, civilians are being injured, civilians are being killed, and they're keeping the hospitals stocked, they're keeping different local clinics stocked where people can actually go and get medicines. So they've been keeping us updated with the warehouses that they've been stocking, and now they're opening different bases where they're collecting their supplies.
Yeah.
In
well,
fact,
Anna, I'm glad that's going. I'm glad that is going so well for you. And those are the needs of those people. What about the people themselves? What about the refugees, the amount of refugees, and what is going to become of them? Do you think this country, UK, GB, you represent so many Ukrainians living here? I believe there are about 40,000 Ukrainians living around the United Kingdom. What responsibility does this country have?
Well, I'm actually the daughter of someone who was welcomed by Great Britain after the Second World War, who built the Ukrainian community in Coventry. Britain welcomed refugees then from war-torn Germany, where they had been slave workers. And we want the same now. We hear that the rules for visas have eased slightly, but there are going to be a lot of refugees, hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And they need accommodated. Ukrainians are very friendly people, they're hardworking, and they will be an asset to any country that they settle in. But as we were saying today, I was in the meeting with Boris Johnson yesterday with community leaders. Once the situation in Ukraine settles down, they will be going back to rebuild their country.
Anna, what did you say to Boris Johnson in that meeting yesterday?
Well, we were obviously pressing for support. We've been impressed with, for example, the preparations that the Defence Secretary has made. He really has understood Putin's playbook. So we were very much pressing for things, for example, obviously protecting Ukraine's skies. We understand, a no-fly zone is probably difficult, but if you can provide defensive weapons that will help Ukraine clear its skies, and also things like there's so many Russians in London. How many of those people that have been enjoying luxury lifestyles have actually stood up and said, "This is not in my name. We are disassociating ourselves with the Putin regime."
Well, Anna, good luck in your work. Thank you for that message to our viewers this morning. We just want to know what you make of what Anna's had to say and how far you would go to help refugees, your view on refugees into the country. Anna was saying they were once welcomed after the Second World War. At GBNews is the Twitter address.
Yeah, and we should just add, if you do want to support their GoFundMe account, you can find that through Anna Dzyk. She's the Deputy Chair of the Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain, and you can donate and support those refugees fleeing war there.
I tell you what we've got for you after the break. It's an appointment with a doctor, Dr. Mika, to come after the weather. It's looking rather cloudy right across the country. Outbreaks of heavy rain slowly moving north and east. The rain will become persistent and often heavy across southwest England towards lunchtime. Temperatures around 10 or 11 Celsius, turning breezy around the coasts as well.
Dry and bright across southeast England and London with some morning sunshine, but clouds amount to increasing sounds from the west. Temperatures widely in double figures.
Wales, here it could be a cloudy morning for you. Rain spreading across the country, turning heavy over higher ground. And then the Midlands.
After a fairly bright start, they will see increasing amounts of cloud with the risk of some patchy rain moving in by the time we get to midday. Temperatures there around 9 Celsius.
Similar weather conditions across northern England. Cloud increasing quickly with outbreaks of rain moving in from the southwest. Some drier interludes towards Newcastle. Temperatures an average for the end of February. Sunshine and scattered showers will continue across northern parts of Scotland as well.
Yeah, cloudier further south there with increasing amounts of rain moving in. Temperatures around 9 Celsius for Edinburgh. Northern Ireland should also escape most of the rain today with some bright or sunny spells, but also a scattering of showers. Temperatures there around 9 degrees Celsius.
The band of rain will continue to move east as we head through the rest of the day. Drier in the west later, and that is how the weather is shaping up on this Monday. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. The time is 8:31. We're talking medicine now. Many Ukrainian hospitals currently facing immense pressure coming from both helping to heal the wounded as well as operating within the war zone itself. Well, joining us now to look at the difficulty that healthcare professionals are facing in Ukraine is Dr. Emeka Okorocha. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Look, you're trained in emergency medicine, but I suppose all medics now in Ukraine are having to practice some form of emergency medicine. We're hearing tragically from the World Health Organization that oxygen supplies could run out in the country within the next 24 hours. Just explain how significant that will be in terms of healthcare.
It's going to be massively significant because if you think of the impact that's going to be, especially when you look at trauma, the impact that's going to be on emergency services, and you need oxygen for the basics. So obviously acute medicine, then chronic disease as well, and respiratory disease. And you have to remember that COVID-19 is still a thing, and you have over 1,700 patients with COVID-19 in Ukraine in hospitals currently, and those people will need oxygen as well. So it's going to be a big stress on medical services in terms of, the medical personnel, but mainly the patients, and they're going to suffer.
Well, we're seeing, aren't we, reports of people giving birth in subways. We've seen pictures of babies from neonatal intensive care being moved out of hospitals because of the air raids. As you say, stress, a hugely problematic thing for patients in these sorts of situations.
It's terrible because you're going to have a lot of more people coming into hospitals, and then they're going to have reduced bed size because they're now trying to put people in basements, basically, essentially to, protect their patients from air raids. And I just don't know how they're going to cope. I, unfortunately, was in a position where during COVID, I was working in a hospital here in England that ran out of oxygen just because we had so many patients on maximum airflow. And that was a big crisis. And to deal with that, as well as the trauma that they're going to have with people coming in after, the impact of unfortunate bombs and whatnot, it's going to be very difficult for their health service.
Military strategists have been predicting over the weekend that Kiev, because they haven't been successful in the Russians in their attack so far, are going to circle the city and basically trap civilians within it. And the advice to civilians is very much to be swatting up really on their medical skills. So people need to learn about tourniquets, about plastic sheeting for burns. People are being encouraged to give blood. What would you be encouraging people to do? And what are the most important things to know?
I think the first thing is like basic first aid. Like you said, in terms of tourniquets, burns, wounds, I think basic first aid anyone could do. And I've worked with St. John's Ambulance here, and I've taught basic first aid, and anyone can learn it within a matter of hours, basically.
And learn.
Literally, you can go on YouTube and learn it. You don't need to be, an A&E doctor or medical personnel to really help. Just using the resources around you, it's going to be a big impact. You mentioned mothers and giving birth. It's going to be a big impact on them because you need a number of different medical services once you're giving birth. It's going to be tough for Ukrainian medical services.
And of course, this isn't even talking about the situation with the refugees who are managing to get out of the country, but many of them having fled in a complete panic without their medication. So we're talking about problems for diabetics. Who else might be at threat without their medication? I mean, any number of them.
Yeah, it's going to be people suffering with chronic disease. So you're talking about diabetics, asthmatics, people suffering high blood pressure, cholesterol, all of it. They're all going to take a hit because you need these medications, you need these resources on a day-to-day basis. And if you can't access them, that's when they're going to need to basically come into A&E and see their doctors. And if you're fleeing, you're not going to really have a GP in whichever country you're going to flee the border. It's going to take a massive impact on not only the medical services in Ukraine, but the bordering countries as well.
And the pictures that we're seeing, really emotive pictures that we've seen, not only of protests, of people all in spaces together, but people packing into trains, trying to get out of the country.
Yeah.
As you say, COVID is still a thing.
Exactly.
There will be a lot of vulnerable people getting on those trains, and of course that's an absolute haven for the virus.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people now, they don't have a choice. So people who would have maybe been shielding or would have liked, socially distance or stay in their homes, they've been put in a situation where they need to kind of flee and, immerse themselves in packed crowds and whatnot and stuff that they wouldn't genuinely want to do. You see a lot of them there masked up and they're trying to, do their best to avoid COVID or any sort of respiratory disease, but they're not going to be able to. You look at the papers and you look at the images and the videos, and people are putting themselves at risk medically.
And just lastly, of course, being a doctor, it's a vocation, isn't it? It's something that it goes beyond a normal job.
Yeah.
We've heard this morning from the Defence Secretary and yesterday the Foreign Secretary saying if people are in the military and had combat experience but are now civilians, please contact the Ukrainian embassy and go forward and fight. Do you know people within the medical profession who feel like they want to go and lend their support and help where they can?
I do. So my brother actually studies medicine out in Europe. He's in Bulgaria now, but his plan was originally to go to Ukraine.
Right.
And so I know a number of Ukrainian medical students who are now doing their best to actually try and help on the front line in terms of first aid and whatnot, because many of them have been unsuccessful in trying to flee in the country. They're like, you know what, let me give my services and I can to people. And then if it happened here, it'd be the situation myself and my colleagues would be in, where we have medical experience. So we'd be like, you know what, we have medical experience, we have trauma experience, we're A&E doctors, we're going to help on the front lines.
Well, you know what, in these dark days, hearing those sorts of stories is so amazing. Dr. Emeka Okorocha, always a pleasure to have you in. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, sticking with medical news, there are new face mask rules in Wales from today. Masks will not be needed in all indoor settings, although people will still need to wear one in a number of venues. Let's get the latest from our Wales reporter, Lily Hewitson, who has some more details on Wales's, I suppose you could call it Freedom Day today. Lily, what more changes can we expect?
Yes, good morning. As part of the Welsh Government's phased approach to the return to alert level 0, the rules on mask wearing will be eased slightly today. The requirement to wear one in most indoor settings will be removed, but there are still a couple of venues where you're going to have to continue to wear a mask here in Wales. So let's kind of break it down and go through those different places. So from today, pupils won't have to wear a mask in class, but schools can now decide their own rules for mask wearing elsewhere on the school campus. Masks are no longer mandatory in places like museums and theatres and cinemas here in Wales, and they're no longer needed in places of worship too. But of course there are those couple of places where you're going to continue to have to wear them. Places like shops, in salons and close contact services, and in health and social care settings, as well as on public transport. Now, I had a chat to Chris, who runs Wales's oldest cinema. He told me what the relaxation of mask rules will mean for his business in Monmouth.
Well, it's just another step back to normality, isn't it? And I think people want to feel that they're in a place of entertainment where they can behave in a relatively relaxed manner, and wearing a mask isn't a particularly relaxed thing to do. I mean, if you've got this place completely full of people, which we've had over the last 2 weeks for a comedy night, for example, like Joel Dommett last week, I mean, it's completely unnatural for everybody to be sitting there in masks while they're laughing their head off. So the fact that from Monday they'll be able to take those masks off and behave more naturally is something which I think has got to be an improvement. I'm sure there'll be a reluctance around the building for people to completely take masks off, and my staff, for example, will want to continue to wear masks for their own protection as well. So in public places here, I think we will ask people to bear in mind that there will still be some concerns, but when they watch the entertainment, whether it's a film or a live show, to be able to take the masks off, I think is a major improvement.
So one of the settings where mask wearing will continue to be a requirement is in salons and in close contact services. So I had a chat to Paula and Stacey in their salon in Pontypool about what this will mean for their business going forward.
It's very confusing, all the rules that keep changing all the time, and it is very unfair that, like you say, when you come into a salon-based situation, we have to wear masks, but if you go into like next door to the pub next door and you're mingling with several numbers of people. You haven't got away one, so it doesn't make sense, and it's just confusion all about, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're working one-on-one. There's all like the requirements in place, sanitizer, and I'd like to think that our customers are sensible enough that if they're feeling unwell, they wouldn't come anyway. They would cancel their appointment and wherever. And then you go in next door where there is alcohol, so once the alcohol's in, the common sense is out. There's loads of people in there, you know, all lingered, sat together, and there won't be a mask in sight. Whereas in here, and with my job especially, and when the girls do like facial waxing, the masks need to be removed anyway. When I'm giving like somebody a haircut, they need to remove their mask so that I can finish cutting the sides of their hair, etc., things like that. So I'm sort of over it now. And I think that if it's one rule for one, it should be the same rule for others. And then you travel half an hour up the road and everything has come to a complete stop and there's no COVID regulations in place at all. Exactly. We're a nation and we need to be on the same point all at the same time. I think it's just conflicting who can come up with the best rules, who can, get past COVID quicker, or Wales done it better, or England done it better, rather than us working together. I think we should be in it as one.
Now, the next review of COVID restrictions here in Wales will come on Friday. We could see face masks being scrapped by the end of March and self-isolation rules becoming guidance rather than law, but time will tell. For now, back to you.
Oh, yes, lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Look, we're going to take a break there with the time at 18 minutes before 9 o'clock. And what we'll do is we'll have another look at today's papers. Major General Chip Chapman and the Chief Executive of the think tank Demos, Polly Mackenzie, with their views after this. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
All the front pages of the papers today about Ukraine. A lot of them make scary reading with the nuclear high alert issued by President Putin towards all his forces in Russia. And here to discuss what is in the papers, Major General Chip Chapman, who's a former head of counterterrorism at the Ministry of Defence, and Polly Mackenzie, who's the chief executive of the Demos think tank and former advisor to Nick Clegg.
So let's start with you, Chip, and you're looking inside the Mail, page 16, but lots of the papers covering it. This huge change in German foreign policy and, crucially, its defence spending.
Yeah, it's an incredible about turn because the Germans have always taken the position that there's the futility of force rather than utility of force. And the fact that Chancellor Olaf Scholz got a standing ovation yesterday for announcing $100 million uplift, and the fact that they're actually giving 1,000 anti-tank weapons and 500 Stinger missiles, which are anti-aircraft missiles, is a profound shift.
But has there not been traditionally a cap on what they can spend with armed forces and the amount of pieces of equipment they can have since Second World War?
No, it's only a politically imposed cap.
Oh.
And they've always taken the view that multilateralism and dialogue is the way forward, and that the Cold War ended by engagement, not by economic strength.
Mm-hmm.
That has been ripped up in the last week, and that's why they've gone to the position they have.
Well, not only have they changed position, they've now gone to the highest spender in the whole of Europe on defences. So they've gone from being nowhere to the top of the league table overnight.
It all depends on what your GDP is.
Yeah,
So 2% of GDP, if you've got a bigger economy, is still 2%. I think what's the really interesting thing is that two of the parties in the German government, of course, are the Free Alliance and the Greens. They emphasise values and human rights. Both of those have been ripped up by Putin as well, which is why the standing ovation for the Chancellor occurred in the Parliament.
Polly, I want to come to you now because I don't know. I was almost going to say the star of the show, and I don't mean to say that, but we're talking about Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president. He is an amazing man with an amazing history who probably shouldn't be the president of that country, but he is, his star is shining.
Absolutely, and lots of the papers are going into depth, sharing highlights of his career history. There's a double-page spread in The Sun which goes into it, talks about him as a comedian. He even had a skit where he and his friends would appear to at least be playing the piano with their penises, with their trousers down their ankles. And yet, cometh the hour, cometh the man. You know, he has stepped up to provide inspirational leadership to his country. But beyond that, I think, to the whole of the West. I've seen on Twitter people saying, let's admit it, every sentient person has a crush on Volodymyr Zelensky right now. He is a remarkable man. And, I think Chip's completely right that this shift in Germany's position is remarkable. The unity, actually, with which countries with different, politics, different prejudices are coming together to tackle those sanctions, moving in concert. There is I guess, a sort of upside of some kind that Putin has given us, a unity that the West has really struggled with for the last 25, 30 years. And he is the hero of the hour, I think, who is helping to unite that sense.
I just want to ask how much of a mortal threat you think he's under, Chip, because clearly he is target number one for the Kremlin, and, that would be how they could topple Ukraine, in theory. Is that likely to happen? I mean, there's genuine fear that could happen in the next
Yeah, I think
weeks.
that there will be a decapitation strategy from the Russians. The fact that he's remained in Kiev is significant, because if he went to the west, to Lvov, the Russians could say, we are the legitimate government when they take over. So staying in Kiev is really, really important. But charismatic leadership often means that if that man goes, you need someone to replace him. So I hope that they've got the bench sorted out, because it is a real possibility.
Well, even the mayor.
Talking about the bench, we're going to talk about football now and the world governing body, FIFA. Polly, this is in the Times, page 60, and this is about FIFA's response to the Russian invasion.
Yeah, the back pages of the Times. FIFA has decided not to expel Russia from the World Cup. In fact, they are saying that so long as they play as the football union of Russia, they can still come along.
They're still Russia, though, aren't they?
They're still Russia. And I think that, the reality is this has been tried in the past with the Olympics, for example, of expelling them but still letting the athletes play. Sport is just as political as everything else in our lives, and it doesn't make sense, especially when the countries there slated to actually play are refusing to play against them.
Too much money involved in all of this. Polly and Chip, thank you both very much indeed.
OK, well, I'm pleased to now say that we're joined by the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey. Very good morning to you, Minister. Thanks for joining us on Breakfast. Look, you'll have read the papers this morning, almost all of them leading with the nuclear threats being made by President Putin yesterday. Are we taking these threats seriously? If anything we've learned in the last week, that we underestimate Putin at our peril?
Well, yes and no, to give you a sort of nuanced answer. No, in that I don't think that Putin really means this. I think this is a distraction, frankly, against the reality that the ground campaign in Ukraine is going very badly for him. They're taking far more
that he would invite
losses than
Minister, I'm just trying to say, make the point that you say he mightn't really mean this. We all sat back, and how many people said, invade Ukraine? He doesn't really mean it, but he did.
Well, Eamonn, let me answer the question, please. So I think he's using this to distract. I think he's using it as a way of trying to kind of say to the Russian people that there's an existential challenge from NATO, which of course there isn't. But on the other hand, yes, we are ready in so much as we don't bring our nuclear forces to readiness. Neither does the United States, neither does France. The incredible submariners who crew our nuclear submarines armed with the UK's nuclear deterrent are at sea 24 hours a day, 7 days a week after week, month after month, year after year. They just silently go about their business, invisible to the world, always ready to be the ultimate guarantee of the UK's sovereignty. So I don't think that President Putin means this. I think that this is a distraction against something that's gone very, very badly wrong for him in Ukraine. But the Royal Navy, on behalf of the United Kingdom, ensures that the UK is ready every second of every day.
It's a strange world, though, isn't it, when the British government is saying UK citizens with combat experience should and can legally go and fight in a country that's under threat from a nuclear power. Do you find that frustrating as the Armed Forces Minister, that we aren't able to get our boots on the ground and defend democracy more appropriately?
Well, there's two bits to that question as well. I mean, on the question about whether British citizens with military experience should be going to Ukraine, I would say not. The travel advice is that British citizens, for whatever purpose, should not be going.
Embassy.
I'm aware, and I think that the Defence Secretary this morning and me on your show right now are just offering that, you know, war is brutal. It's not the sort of thing that you jump on a plane to go and do for the fun of it. The people that you are seeing picking up Kalashnikov rifles in Kyiv today are doing so because they face an existential threat and they are desperate, and that is inspirational. But I don't think we should be encouraging British citizens to go to Ukraine to fight. What they can do if they want to stand up for freedom and democracy is go to their local recruiting office and join the British Army, Royal Navy and Royal Air Force, where they would be very welcome, both full-time and part-time as reservists. To your other point about whether or not the UK is doing enough and whether the West should be doing more. I mean, you know, what the Ukrainians are asking for is air defence and anti-tank weapon systems. Well, the UK donated thousands of anti-tank weapon systems a few weeks ago. We have plans to deliver more and more of lots of other things that they've been asking for as well. Now we're in the combat phase of operations. We can't be as open with you as we would like to be about what exactly that is and where and when it will go. But other countries have now rallied to the flag as well. Ben Wallace convened a donor meeting on Friday night in which a lot of other European countries who had previously not been willing to do military aid have now been willing to do so. And so, you know, Stinger anti-aircraft missiles are flowing into Ukraine, anti-tank missiles from around Europe. You know, the Ukrainians have stood their ground brilliantly. They've employed the UK weapon systems, the NLAW anti-tank missiles that we gave them to incredible effect, taking out a very large number of Russian armoured vehicles. And now the rest of Europe is joining us in giving more. But I don't think that we should be committing NATO troops because that's effectively to declare war on Russia.
OK, but are those weapons that you described flowing into the country? I mean, we heard reports this morning that some of the weapons had been smuggled in. It's a hugely difficult situation to get all of that hardware into the country at the moment. And, of course, we heard Zelensky over the weekend saying, I need ammunition, not a ride. And is our help getting to the people who need it?
No comment.
Can't answer that.
Okay. Can you say to me, Minister, you were talking about there what would be tantamount to declaring war on Russia. Say Russia continues with its military exercises, its submarines off the coast of Wales and Ireland, its reconnaissance aircraft flying over Scotland. Would your response now be different, stronger, or not?
Well, it's already very robust. I mean, make no mistake, the quick reaction alert RAF jets that are on station at RAF Lossiemouth in the north of Scotland and RAF Coningsby in East Anglia, they are armed. And every single day they are at immediate notice to go up into the United Kingdom's airspace and to protect our airspace from unidentified or enemy aircraft. So that just carries on. You know, the number we see routinely flights coming around the high north that the QRA has crashed out to fly against it. Very often you see reports in the newspapers of sonic booms because we've given them permission to fly above the speed of sound across the UK to get up there and intercept. So that's kind of business as usual. We meet people with a pretty robust response when they try and enter our airspace at any time. And similarly, the Royal Navy operates a fleet-ready escort that, again, is an armed warship that will always go out to escort any non-allied warship through UK waters. We have all sorts of things that we use day in, day out to track Russian submarines in the North Atlantic alongside our allies in NATO. So, when it comes to activity around the homeland, there's nothing exceptional that is happening from the Russians. There's nothing exceptional that we are doing in response because it's just what the MOD does. But 999 days in 1,000, it's not newsworthy. What's going on in Ukraine, that clearly is exceptional. And that's why people are working day and night in this building to make sure that we can get all of the support to the Ukrainians that we possibly can, and that we are coordinating and facilitating the delivery of support from other countries as well.
Look, we're almost out of time. I just have to ask you about visas. A change in position from the UK in the last few hours. Do you think we've gone far enough? We're still lagging behind the EU, who've said that Ukrainian refugees are welcome for up to 3 years. We're only allowing close, immediate relatives to UK citizens, Ukrainians living in the UK, access to the UK. Should we extend our hand a bit further?
Well, firstly, the offer that's already been made is in itself quite a generous one, given the size of the Ukrainian diaspora in the UK. That covers a lot of people in its own right. But my instinct is that this is an evolving area of policy. I think you've heard from Downing Street last night that there was an announcement. I think you've seen that there's an indication that they're still working through what more could and should be done. And when Parliament sits this afternoon, I suspect that there will be a statement on this that will answer your questions further. But the PM on Saturday night, when he was up at RAF Brize Norton, visiting the amazing air crews that are delivering this military aid to Ukraine, he was asked about this, and he was very clear that, of course, the UK will take refugees. We have a fine tradition of doing so, most recently shown through the way that we've taken in so many tens of thousands of Afghans.
OK, big hint of more to come. Thank you very much, James Heapy, Armed Forces Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Look, let's take a break. We're right across things here, what's happening in Ukraine. We'll have more analysis from our security expert, Mark White, right after this. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamonn
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. news is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Ukrainian President Zelensky agrees to peace talks with Russia at the border with Belarus, but says he holds little hope of any meaningful solution.
A very good morning to you wherever you're watching or listening. 9 o'clock, Monday the 28th of February. This is Breakfast on GB News, on television and radio with Eamonn and Isabel.
Coming up this morning, Ukraine will hold peace talks with Russia after President Putin put his nuclear forces on high alert. The UN General Assembly will hold an emergency special session today for the first time since 1982.
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has told a Ukrainian church in London that immediate family members fleeing Ukraine will be able to join their relatives here in the UK.
And we're on your doorstep this morning at the Becontree estate in Dagenham, which is the largest council estate in the UK with more than 27,000 homes. Alice Porter will be there finding out what matters to you.
And as always, you can join in any of our conversations. You're very welcome. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or you can tweet at gbnews. Off now with the latest situation in Ukraine. Mark White is across any breaking news that is coming in. What have you got for us, Mark?
Well, obviously, following on from that interview with the Armed Forces Minister James Heappey just now, again echoing what the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace and Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, had said over the weekend about those volunteer fighters. Now, the advice from the UK government is that they shouldn't go to Ukraine. It is a war zone at the moment, but they acknowledge that people will. They will answer the call from President Zelensky to form this foreign legion, if you like, that's what he called it, of volunteers who would go to take up arms in the defence of Ukraine. They acknowledge that some people will go, and what they are saying is that only if you've got military experience, so a former member of the armed forces, you're a UK citizen, then if you're determined to go against UK advice, then they say go to the Ukrainian embassy, contact the Ukrainian embassy and get advice from them about how best you can help. This is clearly significant. There were some raised eyebrows at the weekend when Liz Truss first mentioned this and concerned that perhaps she was going off script, but it doesn't seem so. Because you'll remember, of course, during the Syrian conflict, there was legislation that was brought in that prevented people going to fight in that country. Now, that was designed to stop people going over to Syria to join jihadi groups, but it had the consequence of also netting some former British army and military personnel who'd gone over to fight alongside the Kurds and the Yazidis against groups like ISIS. Well, there's no such legislation in place for Ukraine, so it would not be, we understand, illegal for UK citizens to go and get involved in fighting in that country if they are determined to do that. Now, some other key lines that have been coming out, Ben Wallace, and again confirmed by James Heappey, that weapons systems, these shoulder-launch anti-tank and surface-to-air missile systems have been smuggled into Ukraine since the fighting began. We know that these systems have been provided mainly by the UK and the US to Ukraine in the weeks and months leading up to the war. But now that the conflict has broken out, much more difficult to get the weapons in. But they have, confirmed by the Defence Secretary and James Heappey, managed to get weapon systems into that country, and they're being used to good effect. In terms of the imagery that's coming out this morning, satellite imagery is coming out from that region, which shows, according to the Ministry of Defence, the main armoured column of Russian tanks and personnel carriers, also supply line vehicles as well, such as tankers carrying fuel and food. Now, that was yesterday, when these images were taken, about 40 miles north of Kiev. The latest information from the British Ministry of Defence is they believe that the main armoured column is about 18 miles north of the Ukrainian capital as we speak. Also, some images that have been coming out, and I'll describe these to our listeners on radio who don't have the benefit of seeing the television pictures, but images of what is apparently, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defence, their drone, a Ukrainian drone, taking out a Buk missile launcher. Now, these are these mobile missile launchers. You can see it's a satellite drone image, and then a missile from what we're told is a Turkish supplied drone takes that out. Massive explosion on the ground. This is an indication, I think, that there is not complete air superiority in Ukraine, that the Ukrainian military do have the ability to get some of their air assets into the air as well. And James, cleverly as well, the Foreign Office Minister has been retweeting an image of Ukrainian soldiers with these shoulder-launched missiles that have been supplied, also wearing British Army fatigues there. That has been supplied to them in recent months to Ukrainian soldiers who have been using these anti-tank shoulder-launched missiles. And you heard James Heappey in your interview there saying they've been used to really good effect. According to him, they've taken out many armoured personnel carriers and quite a number of Russian tanks.
Mark, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Let's get another take on what we're doing, because joining us now, Colonel Richard Kemp, Colonel Kemp's former Cobra chairman and British Army commander in Afghanistan. Colonel Kemp, good morning to you. Thanks for your time.
Good morning.
Thank you. Right, first of all, the nuclear threat. It's over all the front pages of the papers. And we just heard the Defence Minister, James Heappey, saying Putin doesn't mean it. He doesn't mean it. He's not going to do it. But they said that last week when an invasion of Ukraine was threatened. It was, no, he doesn't mean it. What do you think?
Well, last week he said he wasn't going to invade Ukraine, and then he did. This week he's saying he's going to use, or he's threatening to use nuclear missiles. I suspect it's part of rhetoric rather than real intent. He does have control of the largest nuclear missile force in the world, but he also can't directly press the button himself. He can give the orders, but the action to fire and to initiate nuclear attack is in the hands of the Ministry of Defence, of his generals. Now, it's quite possible they could be complicit with him in carrying out the world's greatest ever atrocity, probably, which could ensue from missile launch, unless it was just done as some kind of a demonstration in the middle of the ocean. But I think it's not a particularly likely threat. But I hope I'm right in saying that. But of course, some people would argue Putin is unhinged and he can do anything.
I just want to ask you, just in the last few moments, seen the breaking news that President Zelensky has appealed to the EU to speed up their accession into the European Union. Look, the situation in Ukraine, we're being told in the next 24 hours, is absolutely critical as the Russian troops are circling around the capital, and we understand that this is a decapitation mission. They want to kill Zelensky. Give us a sense then of how likely success is in that sense for Russia, and whether or not Zelensky and indeed the Ukrainians can hold the line against the Russians.
No, I don't underestimate the Ukrainian armed forces, and I think they fought extremely bravely. And And effectively, so from what we can tell from reports coming via the media, I've also been in touch myself with Ukrainian soldiers who are fighting in the current war, and I would pay tribute to what they're doing. But unfortunately, I don't see a way in which they can prevail here. A lot of people are saying that even after just 4 days fighting, they're surprised that Putin hasn't destroyed Ukraine, and they're saying that he underestimated the Ukrainian army. I don't think either of those two things are true. I don't think he set out to do shock and awe here. I think he deliberately wants to minimize, and I say, it sounds quite counterintuitive to say this, but I think he wants to minimize the amount of casualties he causes on both sides. He doesn't want body bags flowing back into Russia and causing even more problems from there than he's got now. He doesn't want to inflict too many casualties on the civilian population of Ukraine, because he then intends to run Ukraine and doesn't want a massive insurgency going on. So I think for those reasons, he's doing it incrementally. He will use extreme military force if he has to, as we've seen in Syria and Chechnya. But that will be for him, I think, a last resort.
Colonel, read the body bags. I saw pictures and a report in one newspaper last week that said they actually have mobile crematoriums just to avoid the pictures of bodies actually going back to places like Moscow. But I wanted to draw upon your own experience as Army Commander in Afghanistan and what's happening here. I mean, you had to face insurgents. You had to face the Taliban. With what Putin's got to do, yes, he's got to take ground, but he's got to keep ground as well. Isn't Ukraine's best bet to wage a guerrilla warfare, which would be very, very difficult for the Russian forces to survive after this?
Well, that's what might come out of this. I think it's possible that will be a long-term insurgency campaign. If Putin prevails and if he does occupy the country with his armed forces, I think we will see a large-scale insurgency. And I think if that happens, and even before it happens, we should be preparing to support that. We should provide arms to them. We should provide intelligence to them. We should provide special forces if necessary to advise and assist them. But we should help the Ukrainians turn Ukraine into a quagmire for Putin, because I believe that's probably the only way. If he does succeed in this operation, it's the only way he will be brought down by a disastrous counterinsurgency campaign in which body bags are flowing back to Russia. Now, I don't want to see Russian soldiers, Russian conscripts in particular, killed at the whim of Putin, but unfortunately, I think it's the only way in which we can bring Putin down. And Putin, I think, must come down. We can't have his almost insane aggression rampaging across Europe. We don't know what his next target is. So we should be supporting an insurgency if it arises.
OK, Colonel Richard Kemp, thank you very much indeed. I want to bring you some breaking news in the last few moments. President Zelensky has been giving a speech in Ukraine in which he says 45 have been wounded over the past 4 days. That is children. 16 of them have been killed. And he's also given an update on the numbers of Russian soldiers that have been killed so far. He's saying 4,500 Russian soldiers have been killed. He's also saying that prisoners in Ukraine could be released to fight the Russians. We're keeping a close eye on what he's saying during that speech.
Now let's hear what the Daily Mail columnist Andrew Pearce has got to say on things. Zelensky, what a leader, what a character.
Inspirational. When Time do their Man of the Year, it's him. He's already winning it, isn't he? And he was seen as a joke figure by Putin, completely underestimated.
Well, by the rest of us, he was a stand-up comic, and he shouldn't have won an election.
Shouldn't have won the election, and people in Ukraine thought we've made a terrible mistake choosing this man. They always kick out their prime ministers, their presidents in Ukraine, and he's been brilliant. He's a great communicator. He's appearing in front of some important... brave, and he's not running away, and he's appearing in public. He's appearing by important monuments, so the Ukrainian people know he's there. He's transformed his standing, and he's really inspiring Ukrainian people to take up arms. You've seen people in their 80s being armed with rifles and Kalashnikovs because they want to defend their country, and that's what Putin has underestimated, the sheer passion and patriotism of the Ukrainian people. And of course, his army, a lot of them are conscripts. And there is a suggestion, when they're getting into Ukraine, they thought they were on a military exercise. They had no idea they were going to have to kill people they regard as their kith and kin.
Lots of suggestions that Putin had no idea how quickly he could unite the West as well. And the way we've seen the sanctions being brought in led very much, we have to say, Boris Johnson keen to evict Russia from SWIFT. Do you think we're doing enough when it comes to refugees?
Look, I don't think there's going to be a huge influx of refugees wanting to come to Britain because there's not much of a connection here. We've got a 40,000 population here. That's it. And they've said relatives, families first. But I noticed in the cathedral yesterday, the Ukrainian cathedral, when the Prime Minister was there, he was giving a standing ovation because people there think Britain has been leading the way. We're doing brilliantly on arms. We're one of the first countries to arm the Ukrainians. They're singing God Save the Queen, the army, because they think we've done so well. And it's some of our anti-tank weapons that have disabled so many of their tanks. Look, I think we'll do the right thing on refugees as and when they want to come here, but most of them are going to want to stay near Ukraine, hence why they're all going to Poland.
Anti-tank weapons are one thing, and Europe standing against Russia is another thing, but he's still got his finger on a nuclear option.
Yeah, he has. Did you see that picture there of those two generals when he announced, I'm putting him on alert? A look of complete horror. He clearly hasn't cleared it with the military, and the great hope's got to be, if this war continues to get bogged down, the quagmire that Colonel Kemp talked about, that they take him out.
And that is the intention, isn't it? The intention is not for the West to be seen to do this.
They do it. They bring him down. The oligarchs will be very unhappy because
we can see that footage. There you go.
That. These are two men who are thinking, what did he just say? But the point, as Colonel Kemp made as well, he doesn't actually have his finger on the button. They do, thank God. Whereas in Britain, Boris has got his finger on the button, in conjunction with America, of course. You know, I think America is led by a completely hopeless president, I'm afraid. I don't think he's been very good in all this, but I think Boris has been good. And for once, I'm going to praise the European Union. I think they've stepped up to the mark.
Well, Germany has been unbelievable.
Finally arming another country.
At the beginning of this, I mean, they came out with Nord Stream 2, but their financial sanctions otherwise were a bit weak. Well, haven't they stepped up to the plate?
And for the first time, they're arming a country. They're sending in lots of anti-tank weapons too, and they're going to spend a lot more money on defence spending, because we're all supposed to be spending 2.5% or whatever it's a GDP. We do, Germany doesn't, and it's the richest country in Europe. Perhaps we can start building some tanks now and building our army, because it's about to go down to even lower than the Crimean War when we were last at war with these people, because we've only got 148 tanks. 148? It's hopeless. So this, I think, shows we do need we need to increase our conventional military warfare.
This costs money, though.
Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Your views on the military, your views on the military in the UK being run down, and let us know at GB Views. With that, we'll take a break. And we'll be... GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask the questions that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamonn Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamonn.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's now time for On Your Doorstep. We're going now to Alice Porter. Alice this morning has been bringing us around Dagenham and asking people in what issues are affecting them now. Alice, we just finished with the Daily Mail associate editor Andrew Pearce there, and that is actually the housing state where he was reared.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. Wow, here on the Becontree Estate?
Yeah. Small world.
That's incredible, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely enormous. It spans about 4 miles. So, yeah, it's been fascinating going around and meeting so many of the people that live here. There's 27,000 homes here. It's absolutely enormous, and it's been fantastic being out and about and meeting some of the brilliant people here. I've just come to Ballards Road, and there's somebody here who I think is going to be really interesting to talk to about the sad news that we're seeing that's been coming out of Ukraine. So, hopefully, we can have a bit of a chat. Good morning. Good morning. You're live on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm Ray Deskins, Church of England priest in Dagenham.
Lovely. Can I come in? Is that all right? Thank you so much. Hello there. Good morning. Hi there. I'm Alice. Hello. Hello. And you're Helen. And so you're married to Ray, and you're also involved with the church in the area. Is that right? Yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you so much. Can I just come through? Thank you. Oh, a cup of tea. Yes, please. Thank you very much. Oh, wow. That is a great book selection, Ray. That is absolutely brilliant. My goodness me. And then there's all those lovely family pictures over here. That's lovely. How many children have you got and grandchildren?
3 daughters and 8 grandchildren.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, Helen, thank you so much. Lovely. I'm sure I'm going to plonk myself here if that's okay.
Certainly.
Thank you so much. Now, we were just hearing just now, some very sort of sad news, really, that's coming out of Ukraine. We've had figures come in just this morning from the Ukrainian president saying about deaths from Ukrainians, but also from Russians as well. I mean, it's obviously such a desperate situation. As for someone who's a reverend, and both of you working in the church, in the sort of community, I mean, how are people sort of reacting, really, in your congregation to what's taking place?
I think they're reacting with horror. It's a desperately sad situation that war's been unleashed in such an evil way so suddenly on a civilian population. It's unthinkable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've also been hearing that EU member states, they're going to be sending arms to Ukraine. It's quite sort of unprecedented. I mean, you know, as two people who are sort of both religious, I mean, where does that sort of, what do you sort of think about that? I mean, on the one hand, you know, some people may feel it's right to give them arms, but of course, you know, war can be such a terrible thing. I mean, what do you think, Helen?
Well, I mean, I think if they send arms, it could be a quick fix, but wars breed more wars, and so it's not a real solution. And the real solution to a problem is people talking, people getting to know each other, as happened at the end of the Second War, when within Europe nations started working together. And so we've had so many decades of peace, because they may argue, but it's words, not bombs.
And what about in your congregation? Have you got Ukrainians? Because I mean, obviously, you know, I know you were born on the Becontree Estate. I mean, it's quite a multicultural sort of area now. I mean, have you got many Ukrainians in your congregation?
Actually, it's a delight to see the real variety we have in Dagenham. We have got a Ukrainian member of one of our churches, and other Ukrainians have visited from time to time. So yes, we do value and rejoice in the fellowship with Ukrainian members, and of course Russian members.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you got sort of, I mean, it's a difficult situation at the moment, and we were saying earlier, I mean, we have to sort of separate the Russian government from the Russian people, and how does that, what sort of challenge do you have in terms of your congregation in regards to that? How are they feeling?
Well, obviously everyone's facing the situation with fear and trepidation. For those with family in Ukraine, it's a particularly fearful time, and they're wondering how their family will be kept safe, how they can be possibly rescued from a dramatic situation. And at this present moment in time, we've just newly arrived at this position, so we don't know what the solution is yet.
And I know you were saying to me earlier, you've actually got one member of your congregation who's half Ukrainian and half Russian. And it just, I suppose, in some ways, that sort of sums up the complexity of this situation, doesn't it?
It certainly does. There's no easy split. As you said, it's not a question of the Ukrainian people attacking the Ukrainian people being attacked by the Russian people. These are two communities whom we must love and care for and value, but it looks as if the war has been unleashed in an immoral way, and now we've got to respond to this particular situation.
Well, Ray and Helen, thank you so much for letting me into your home and for the cup of tea. Hugely appreciated. I mean, obviously such a horrendous ongoing situation in Ukraine, and it's just so important speaking to people who are out there, speaking to people and working with those in the community who are, of course, immensely affected by it all.
Well, Alice, thank you to you and all your guests from Dagenham today for speaking to us as we go out and about on your doorstep. It could be you sometime later in the week. Let us know. At GB News is the Twitter strap.
That's it from us for today. Up next, Tom Harwood has the briefing. Don't go anywhere.
It's looking rather cloudy right across the country. Outbreaks of heavy rain slowly moving north and east. The rain will become persistent and often heavy across southwest England towards lunchtime. Temperatures around 10 or 11 Celsius, turning breezy around the coasts as well.
Dry and bright across southeast England and London with some morning sunshine, but clouds amount to increasing sounds from the west. Temperatures widely in double figures.
Wales, here it could be a cloudy morning for you. Rain spreading across the country, turning heavy over higher ground, and then the Midlands.
After a fairly bright start, they will see increasing amounts of cloud with the risk of some patchy rain moving in by the time we get to midday. Temperatures there around 9 Celsius.
Similar weather conditions across northern England. Cloud increasing quickly with outbreaks of rain moving in from the southwest. Some drier interludes towards Newcastle. Temperatures an average for the end of February. Sunshine and scattered showers will continue across northern parts of Scotland as well.
Yeah, cloudier further south there with increasing amounts of rain moving in. Temperatures around 9 Celsius for Edinburgh. Northern Ireland should also escape most of the rain today with some bright or sunny spells, but also a scattering of showers. Temperatures there around 9 degrees Celsius.
The band of rain will continue to move east as we head through the rest of the day. Drier in the west later, and that is how the weather is shaping up on this Monday. GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube. You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows. Every day, we ask